Chapter 1125. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 52 seconds AM. Chapter 1125. Chapter 1125 9 Swords Trial. 2. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1125 9 Swords Trial. 2. How gruesome. Tian Yinyu mumbled in a low voice after seeing what had happened to the man on the platform. Do you have any experience at this place, senior? Yuan suddenly asked. Does it look like I have a death wish? This place has one of the highest death rates in the outer area. No matter how good the reward is, it's simply too risky for me. Let's get a closer look. Yuan approached the crowd. I told him that he was biting more than he could chew. He should have stopped after enduring the third strike. Yuan listened to the conversations being held by the people there. What a waste of talent. He was a disciple from the Thousand Saber Manor, right? Yeah, he was one of their top 10 disciples too. What a pity. A pity indeed. By the time Yuan arrived at the platform, another individual was already on the platform and preparing for the trial. There will be a total of 9 strikes. A familiar voice suddenly resounded in the area. Yuan turned to look at the statue, where the voice was echoing from. The more strikes you survive, the better the rewards. Once the sword appears, it will not disappear until it strikes the platform. You may step out of the platform at any time. The first sword will descend in 5, 4, 3. When the voice counted down to 0, a massive sword appeared in front of the statue and slashed at the individual on the platform. This sword bore immense pressure that could split even a mountain. The man on the platform was at the 5th level of Spirit King, yet he could barely keep his eyes open before the pressure. Boom. The ground shook once again as the massive sword struck the platform. Once the dust settled, the people could see that the man had survived the strike, but his arms were already bleeding. The second sword will descend within 5. 5 seconds later, another sword appeared, and it was clearly a size larger than the previous. The second strike is about 1.5 times stronger than the first. Tian Suin mumbled as the sword descended on the man for the second time. Boom. The ground shook slightly harder this time. When the spectators could see the man again, it was clear to them that he was already at his limit, as both of his arms were broken with the bones sticking out and all. The third sword will descend within. Before the voice could even finish his sentence, the man jumped off the stage. The following moment, orbs of light would emerge from the statue, entering the man who had just endured 2 strikes. The man's aura immediately spiked as his cultivation rapidly strengthened, reaching the 7th level Spirit King in the time it took to take a deep breath. Furthermore, his injuries were completely healed. Heavens, his cultivation increased by 2 levels just like that? Since when did cultivation become so easy? Tian Yinyu mumbled in a dazed voice. If you think it's so easy, why don't you get on the stage and try it yourself? Tian Suin sneered at her ignorant remarks. I will watch for a little longer. She quickly responded. Yuan agreed with her and proceeded to watch several more people challenge the 9 swords trial. So the strength of each strike differs from person to person. As expected, this place tests one's potential, not their achievements. He mumbled in a low voice. In the end, out of 15 participants, 2 people had managed to endure 2 strikes. 4 people endured 1 strike, and the other 9 people died from the first strike. Are you going to participate? Yuan turned to look at Tian Yinyu. Can you guarantee that I won't die? She asked in response. I can't. Yuan answered without hesitation. Then I won't. As enticing as the reward is, this is a little too risky even for me, especially when the trial is different for everyone. What about you? You're going to participate, right? He nodded. Yes, I am going to participate. Good luck. Tian Yinyu didn't bother saying any unnecessary words since she knew that it would only be a waste of breath. She trusted Yuan and his strength, and that was all it mattered. After waiting for several more people to go, Yuan finally decided to enter the stage. Even though my cultivation won't increase from this, my instincts tell me that there's something more important than that here. Yuan took a deep breath before retrieving the Empyrean Overlord. The first sword will descend in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A sword appeared before Yuan, but there was something different about this sword. Compared to the swords that appeared previously, This sword was not semi-transparent, and was completely solid, just like a real sword. Moreover, the size of this sword was shockingly large, so massive that it was several times bigger than the statue itself. Heavens! What's with the size of that sword? It's just his first strike, yet it's already bigger than the fourth strike for that Thousand Saber Manor's disciple. Is there something wrong with the trial, or is there something special about that young man? I have witnessed every trial here for the last 100 years, but I have never seen anything like this before. Arun. Heaven knows how destructive it will be. We'll all get caught up in it at this rate. Someone there suddenly shouted. Upon hearing such words, everyone there immediately began scrambling away, running as far away as they could before the sword descended. Meanwhile, Yuan stood as still as a statue on the platform with a resolute expression on his face. The sword began descending towards Yuan the following second, creating a force so powerful that it split all of the nearby clouds halfway before impact, creating a clear blue sky in an instant. Despite the immense pressure bearing down on him, Yuan swung the Empyrean Overlord at the sword in the sky with seemingly no effort at all, and there was even a slight smile on his face. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1126. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 51 seconds AM. Chapter 1126. Chapter 1126 9 Swords Trial 3. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1126 9 Swords Trial 3. The moment Yuan's Empyrean Overlord clashed with the first sword, an intense ripple swept the area while lifting a layer of the ground into the air. When the spectators saw this, they sighed in relief knowing that they'd made the right decision by distancing themselves from the platform. Once the dust settled and the spectators could finally see the situation on the platform, they were surprised to see an uninjured figure standing there. He actually managed to survive that? And he doesn't even seem a bit fazed. What a monster! Before the spectators could even fully grasp the situation, the second sword appeared, and it was almost 2 times bigger than the first sword. This stunned the spectators. If the second sword is already this massive, would the later swords fill the entire sky? A few seconds later, the second sword descended from the sky, creating an even stronger ripple. Boom! The entire ground shook, and everyone could feel themselves being lifted off the ground for a brief second. Good Lord! The sword may be twice as big, but the strength is at least 3 times stronger than the previous sword. And this is only the strength of the second sword. There's no way he's going to survive the next one. After blocking the second strike, Yuan could feel a slight tingly sensation in his hands, but such a thing can be neglected completely. The second strike is already this powerful. What's the 9th strike going to be like? Yuan couldn't help but wonder to himself. The third strike will descend within 5, 4, 3. Yuan quickly cleared his mind and focused on the situation at hand. Yuan swung the Empyrean Overlord upwards, clashing with the colossal sword in the sky. Clang! The spectators that believed they were in a safe distance were quickly swept up by the force and sent tumbling even further away. By now, the entire platform was shattered, and there were fissures all around the area, looking as though a war had taken place there. Once the dust settled, the people were able to see Yuan's condition, and to nobody's surprise, he wasn't in perfect shape this time. The clothes around his arm were torn, and his arm was soaked in blood. Despite this, Yuan wasn't actually in any serious condition, and the injuries on his arm instantly healed due to his perfect regeneration. However, Yuan would be lying if Head said that he wasn't nervous about the remaining 6 strikes. I haven't felt this nervous in a while. He smiled inwardly, feeling a sudden urge of excitement coursing through his profound veins. When the 4th sword appeared in the sky, Yuan swallowed nervously. As expected, the sword had grown in size, and it was even emitting sword chi this time. If I want to defeat this trial, I will need to use more than just my raw strength. That sword is exuding sword chi. This is my first time seeing this. I have never even heard about this before. As the 4th sword descended, Yuan's eyes flickered with a profound light, and his aura exploded outwards. Vanishing ghost soundless blade. The Empyrean overlord was cloaked in a thin yet dense layer of sword chi before it was sent flying at the incoming sword. Boom. Hundreds of sword lights scattered in all directions from the sword chi's impact, terrifying the spectators who scrambled to dodge it. A few were not so lucky and were struck by the sword light. Fortunately, nobody lost their lives, but their bodies were badly injured, and it was as though they were struck by a real sword. And mother, are you okay? Tian Yanya's heart skipped a beat when she noticed Tian Suyan's arm bleeding. I am fine. It's just a scratch. She nodded. Anyways, let's get further away. Something tells me that this will only get worse. We'll die at this rate. The spectators scattered like flies once again. That one was painful. Yuan sighed inwardly after blocking the fourth strike, which had cost him both of his arms. Most would consider Yuan to be crippled now that both of his arms are broken, but within seconds, his perfect regeneration kicked in and restored his arms to its original state. This monstrous healing ability terrified the spectators who were beginning to wonder if Yuan was even human. The fifth sword appeared shortly after, and to everyone's surprise, there was no longer just one sword in the air, but two, and they were both big enough to cover the sky. Heavens! There are two swords now. There's no freaking way this is possible. The spectators were in a daze as their eyes stared blankly at the covered sky. Yuan took a deep breath after seeing this. Young master, I don't doubt your abilities, but this is... Feng Yuxiang spoke up in a worried tone. I'm not giving up when I'm not even halfway through the whole thing. Yuan said with a nervous smile on his face. Why are you pushing yourself this hard? What could possibly be worth risking your life? I don't know, but I will find out soon. Yuan could only hear a defeated sigh from Feng Yuxiang before he swung the Empyrean overlord at the two swords in the sky that was descending at the same time. Young master. Brother Yuan. Those watching from within his body cried out loud when they saw his arms flying off his body. Yuan gritted his teeth as intense pain circulated throughout his body. This isn't as bad as when I first experienced body tempering. He muttered as his arms quickly regenerated. Holy shit. Did you see that? His severed arms regenerated almost instantly. What kind of technique is that? The spectators were more impressed by his regenerating abilities than his strength that endured the fifth strike. Of course, most of them were terrified, as they doubted whether Yuan was human or actually a demon in disguise. Impressive. A calm voice suddenly resounded in the area, catching everyone off guard. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1127. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 50 seconds AM. Chapter 1127. Chapter 1127 9 Swords Trial 4. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1127 9 Swords Trial 4. Yuan looked around after hearing this familiar voice, and he quickly noticed that a figure had suddenly appeared in front of him. This figure was wearing an ordinary mask, yet his body was oozing with an overwhelming aura that naturally made everyone there revere him. That's the Nameless Emperor. The Nameless Emperor has shown up. A few spectators quickly recognized this masked man's identity. What do you want? Yuan calmly asked him. Nothing much. I'm just here to congratulate you for surviving through half of my 9 swords. Only 8 people have achieved this before you, so you're the 9th. A fitting number, don't you think? And he continued, however, do you know how many people have survived the 6th sword? 0. If you wish to survive more than 5 strikes, you'll need to do more. Think outside the box. I will give you 5 minutes to think. That is if you still want to challenge me. The masked figure disappeared into the air as suddenly as he appeared. Think outside the box, huh? Yuan turned to look at the statue and recalled the previous 5 strikes. 2 minutes later, he sat on the uneven ground and closed his eyes as countless images flashed by his mind. I see. I finally understand the true purpose of this place. When Yuan opened his eyes, it shone with enlightenment. The 6th strike will descend within 5. The countdown started again. and 3 massive swords appeared in the sky above him. Yuan took a deep breath and stood in a stance that had never done before. A few seconds later, all 3 swords slashed at Yuan's tiny body that was like an ant's in comparison. A vicious aura exuded from the Empyrean Overlord and Yuan. 9 supreme swords. First sword strike. Yuan muttered as he unleashed his first strike, sending an unfathomable sword light towards the sky. Clang! All 3 swords in the sky disappeared the instant they clashed with Yuan's technique. 9 supreme swords. Rank: Mythic. Mastery level. 1 description. A supreme sword art that consists of 9 different strikes, each stronger than the next. Legend has it that the 9th strike has the prowess to cut even gods. After destroying the 6th strike, Yuan sneered. That was the 6th strike? What a scam! In reality, that was only as strong as the 3rd strike of the real technique. Now that he understood the technique, Yuan realized the true prowess of the 9 supreme swords. Although the 9 swords trial claimed the previous attack to be the 6th strike, it was actually not even half of the technique's true potential. After all, this was only a test. If the real technique was displayed, nobody would be able to pass it. Not even Yuan himself. What kind of sword technique did he just use? It totally obliterated the 3 swords. The spectators almost couldn't believe their eyes. After all, Yuan had barely survived 2 swords, yet had somehow destroyed 3 swords with ease? That didn't make sense no matter how they looked at it. Not bad. You grasped the true purpose of this trial. Since it has come to this, let's just skip all the way to the last strike since it wouldn't make much of a difference. The nameless emperor's voice resounded again. Suddenly, a sword appeared in the sky. However, there was only a single sword, and its size was that of an ordinary sword. This puzzled the spectators greatly, as it looked like the trial had given up to them. Naturally, that wasn't the case, and Yuan knew that very well. While this single ordinary-looking sword may seem insignificant to the others, it looked like an indomitable mountain to Yuan. Looks like I will have to go all out if I don't want to lose my life here. He swallowed nervously. Whoosh! Yuan activated God of War's astral arts while using all of his soul strength, making the avatar as big as a mountain. Heavens! This guy is full of unfathomable techniques. The spectators fell to their butts after seeing his avatar that covered the sky more than the swords did. Whenever you're ready, the nameless emperor spoke again. Yuan gritted his teeth and swung at the statue before him, utilizing the God of War's astral arts as well as his newly learned technique by combining them together. When both sides clashed with each other, it created a terrifying sword chi explosion that literally created a massive crater in the ground. Fortunately, the spectators were smart enough to distance themselves before that happened, but even then, some of them could not escape the sword chi and ended up bleeding from it. Once the huge dust storm settled, the spectators were able to see the situation. Hovering above the center of the crater was Yuan, and he was half naked with sword cuts all over his body. And unlike before, his injuries didn't instantly recover, almost as though his regeneration ability was blocked by the sword marks. Amazing! To think that was just the prowess of the 6th strike. I cannot wait to see how powerful the 9th strike will be if I ever get to use it. Yuan couldn't help but praise the technique. Although the technique was mythic rank just like the God of War's astral arts, it was entirely different in terms of prowess. Though one could argue that both techniques serve a different purpose. While the God of War's astral arts is a unique technique that enhances the prowess of other techniques, the 9 supreme swords is a technique meant purely for destruction, just like the heaven-splitting sword strike. Congratulations, you have passed the trial flawlessly. The nameless emperor appeared before Yuan again. Take this, it's your reward. He extended his hand with his palms open, offering Yuan whatever was on it. A silver key? Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice as he gazed at it. His reward for passing this ridiculous trial was just a mere key? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1128 Sword Pagoda. Chapter 1128 Sword Pagoda. Yuan accepted the silver key shortly after. Although the reward may seem insignificant at glance, it obviously had a significance behind it. Of course, Yuan saw the 9 supreme swords as the real reward for this trial, so he didn't think too much about it. Once the spectators were certain that the trial had ended, they started crowding around Yuan. "Young lord, can you please tell me your name? Which family do you belong to, young master? Please get away from my friend. Can't you see that he's tried?" Shoo, shoo. Tian Yinyu rushed over and started chasing away the crowd. "Are you okay?" She then asked him. "Yeah, I'm fine." He nodded. "Really? Your injuries don't seem to be healing anymore," Tian Yinyu said as she stared at his half-naked bloodied body. "It'll eventually heal itself, and it isn't as bad as it seems, I promise." Yuan smiled. "Hey, there's something wrong with the 9 swords trial. It's not restoring the damage. It should have started by now," someone there suddenly shouted. Normally, even if the entire platform disappeared, the 9 swords trial would restore all damage dealt to the land after every challenger. Maybe it's slowed down because of the severe destruction? The damage this time around is incomparably large, someone said. That makes sense. Let's give it some time. Unbeknownst to these people in the world, Yuan would become the last person to partake in the 9 swords trial, because it never repaired itself no matter how long passed, as it no longer had a reason to exist. "Alright, let's head to our next destination, the Sword Pagoda," Yuan said. "Seriously? You should at least clean yourself before you go anywhere," Tian Suyin said with a slight frown on her face. "I'll clean myself when we come across some water, as we go there." Thus, Yuan left the scene shortly after with Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin following him from behind. Some of the people there tried to follow him, but they quickly gave up after receiving a threatening glare from Yuan. On their way to the Sword Pagoda, Yuan stopped at a river to quickly wash his blood-stained body. "Are you really peeking at a man washing himself? When did you become this pervert?" Tian Suyin scolded Tian Yinyu when she noticed her daughter was taking peeks at Yuan in the river. Shut up. Who's peeking at him?" "I looked for a second, because I noticed that his body had healed from the sword cuts," she stuttered while defending her honor. Tian Suyin couldn't help but also take a look after hearing her daughter's words. "You're right. Although there are still a few sword cuts left, the majority of them are gone. It's only been 2 days since then, and I didn't see him consume any recovery treasures during this time either. Either he has a powerful technique, or he has a heavenly constitution. It's probably a heavenly constitution. After all, it would actually be weird for someone as talented as him to not have a unique physique." Tian Yinyu said. "He said he's not from the upper heavens. Do you believe him?" Tian Suyin suddenly asked. "Does it matter where he came from?" Tian Yinyu raised an eyebrow. Tian Suyin couldn't answer her question. "I understand why you doubt him, but he should have proven himself to be trustworthy by now, especially after everything he's done for us. Actually, that only makes him more suspicious. I cannot understand his intentions for the life of me. The more I think about it, the more I question it, and the more suspicious I get." "Then stop thinking about it. The moment you do, you'll feel much better, just like I did." Tian Yinyu shrugged. She also doubted Yuan's intentions before, but she has since stopped caring about it. "Sorry for the wait. I'm ready to continue." Yuan approached them a moment later. The ladies turned around to see Yuan wearing a fresh new set of robes, and their eyes widened with surprise after seeing how flashy his new clothes were compared to his old clothes. "Are you actually royalty?" Tian Yinyu couldn't help but ask him after seeing his golden dragon robe, her face blushing non-stop. "No, this pair of robes was gifted to me by a friend. I don't normally wear them due to how flashy they appear, but since they're very durable and not easily torn, I have decided to wear them. I don't want to change into new clothes after every challenge after all." Yuan smiled. Are you okay, senior?" Yuan looked at Tian Suyin, who was biting down her lips, looking like she was enduring something. "Don't blush. Don't blush. Don't blush. I'm a married woman. I'm a married woman. Emma." Tian Suyin repeatedly cried inwardly as she silently nodded her head. "Then let's go." After another 3 days, they arrived at the Sword Pagoda. The sword pagoda looked like a massive sword stabbing the ground from far, but if one got close enough, they would be able to see that it was actually a pagoda with a large sword stabbed in the center of it, almost like a skewer. There were hundreds if not thousands of people gathered outside the sword pagoda at this moment. There's a lot of people here, Tian Yinyu mumbled when she saw the crowd there. Well, only 10 people can challenge the sword pagoda at a time, and each person takes on average 30 minutes to finish, so you can imagine why there are so many people here. Tian Suin said. Wait. So everyone here is waiting to enter the sword pagoda? This will take forever if we wait for our turn. Is there any way to enter earlier? Yuan asked. There are 2 ways to skip the line. Either you pay the people in the front of the line to take their spot, or you can force your way through it with your strength. After all, there is no real queue here. The strongest will go first while the weakest will go last. It's just how this place works, Tian Suin explained. Chapter 1129. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 48 seconds AM. Chapter 1129. Chapter 1129 Sword Pagoda. 2. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1129 Sword Pagoda. 2. I will go ahead. The 2 of you should stay back. I will probably make a few enemies in this place, and I don't want to trouble you too. Yuan said as he stared at them with a serious expression. That's only natural. I have already used my chance in this place, so I cannot enter it even if I wish for a second chance. Tian Suin shrugged. Every individual is only allowed 1 chance, and this rule is consistent across every trial within the Nameless Emperor's tomb. So if one had entered Sword Pagoda already, they wouldn't be able to challenge it again even if 100 years passes. I will come back to challenge it once I am more prepared. Since this is my first time entering the Nameless Emperor's tomb, I am going to take it easy. Tian Yinyu said. All right, then I will be back soon. Yuan left their side and began approaching the sword pagoda. Once he was close enough, Yuan flew into the air to avoid the crowd surrounding the sword pagoda. The people beneath him immediately noticed him, but none of them did anything and merely watched in silence. However, as he got closer to the sword pagoda, Yuan would be assaulted by spiritual attacks from the cultivators. He silently scoffed at these attacks that were barely noticeable and continued forward. The front of the sword pagoda was almost empty with 10 individuals standing out from the rest of the crowd. There was a good gap between these 10 individuals and the rest of the crowd, and their aura was much more intense than the others, except for 1 individual. It was obvious that these 10 individuals would be the first ones to enter the sword pagoda. When Yuan landed before these 10 individuals, they all turned to look at him, and some of them even openly sneered in a mocking manner. Hey brat, are you blind? Can't you see that the line is back there? Scram while I am asking nicely. One of the 10 individuals, a bald bulky man, suddenly spoke in a loud voice. Yuan glanced at him and responded nonchalantly. Are you sure you're not the blind one here? The bald man gritted his teeth and started approaching Yuan while veins appeared on his head. He's right. If you don't want to die a pointless death, don't take another step. A calm voice suddenly resounded, instantly halting the bald man's movement. Yuan turned to look at the person who just spoke. He was the only individual there without an aura, but Yuan could tell at glance that he was the strongest there. This person was an exceedingly handsome young man with silver hair and blue eyes, his body oozing with confidence and arrogance, and he appeared to be around the same age as Yuan. You probably can't tell because of the difference between your strengths, but he's not someone you can handle. The silver-haired man spoke again. The bald man didn't utter any words, and merely stood there with a resisting look on his face. Despite not knowing the silver-haired man's identity, the bald man didn't dare to talk back. Shortly before Yuan's arrival, this silver-haired man showed up out of the blue and silenced everyone there with just his overwhelming aura alone, which was an incredible feat considering that most people there were spirit kings. I don't recognize you, so you probably didn't come from the same place as I, or you're disguised. What's your name, young friend? The silver-haired man suddenly approached Yuan with a friendly smile. Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang, huh? The silver-haired man glanced at his golden dragon robe before continuing. I didn't think I would meet someone of your caliber down here, much less a human wearing that sort of outfit. The silver-haired man showed his palm and fist, and gave Yuan a courteous bow. My name's Long Chun, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes, not that you'll know what it means. Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzling manner. He couldn't understand the intentions of this Long Chun. However, he understood that this Long Chun probably came from the upper heavens based on his language. Yuan returned the bow. I hope you won't mind me standing here with you guys. Of course not. If you wanted, you could easily go after me. Long Chun said with a mysterious smile, implying that he was stronger than Yuan. What if I want to go after you too? Yuan smiled back. Ha ha ha. Long Chun started laughing. I don't recall the last time someone has talked back to me. The lower heavens are full of entertainment. Why didn't I come down here sooner? The people there swallowed nervously after hearing Long Chun's words. Although they had no proof that his words were true, none of them doubted his words. So you're from the upper heavens, huh? Which one? Did you come down here specifically for the nameless emperor's tomb? Yuan suddenly asked. I will answer all of your questions if you play a game with me and win. Long Chun said. What kind of game? I was going to enter the Sword Pagoda as soon as possible, but I have decided to enter with you. Whoever climbs the highest will win. To make this more enticing, I will even throw in some royal-grade spirit jade. The people there gasped in shock after hearing such words. A single royal-grade spirit jade easily cost tens of millions of spirit stones. Only someone from the upper heavens could possibly gamble such a resource, so casually. Interesting. And what if you win? What do you want from me? If I win, you will answer a few of my questions. Of course, I don't expect you to have any spirit jades. Long Chun said. Sounds good. Yuan nodded. Good. The doors to the Sword Pagoda suddenly opened, and a figure was flung out of it like trash the very next second. When this happened, the doors that had been closed this entire time remained open, at least until the next participant entered. Long Chun was supposed to enter the Sword Pagoda at this moment, but he didn't, and nobody dared to steal the spot, so they all just stood there in silence. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1130. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 47 seconds AM. Chapter 1130. Chapter 1130 Sword Pagoda 3. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1130 Sword Pagoda 3. The person who had just come out of the Sword Pagoda was extremely confused when he saw the situation outside. Normally, people would be fighting to enter the Sword Pagoda whenever a new slot is opened, but things were different this time. Everyone stood still, almost as though they'd all become statues. This person stood there awkwardly until another person came out of the Sword Pagoda, and a second slot was opened. Are you ready? Long Chun asked as he stared at Yuan. Whenever you are. He nodded. They both turned to face the Sword Pagoda, and approached the entrance while walking side by side. Good luck, Xiaoyang. Long Chun mumbled in a confident voice, right before disappearing into the Sword Pagoda. You too. Yuan smiled. Everyone there released a sigh of relief once the two of them were gone. Just who the heck were those two? The bald man couldn't help but ask. I don't know about that man with the black dragon robe, but that silver-haired man is definitely a young master with a powerful background in the upper heavens. The question is which one? The 4th heaven? The 5th? 6th? I don't think we'll ever know the truth. Someone else said. So you think that Xiaoyang won't win the bet? Of course he won't. No matter how talented he is, he won't beat Long Chun. Hadn't you felt his aura not long ago? He may be a spirit king within the nameless emperor's tomb, but his real cultivation is definitely far superior. But one's cultivation doesn't matter in these trials, only their innate talent. We'll know the answer soon. Let's just wait and see what happens. He actually picked a fight with someone from the upper heavens. His arrogance knows no bounds. Tian Suyin couldn't help but shake her head after witnessing everything from afar. I'll be fine probably. By the way, do you know what is this for dragon and phoenixes that was mentioned? Tianyin asked. No, I don't. But if I had to take a guess, it's probably some title given to geniuses in the upper heavens. Most likely. Good luck, Xiaoyang. When Yuan entered the sword pagoda, he found himself on an empty platform in the middle of nowhere. There were no walls or ceiling in the background. Nothing but the void and the massive platform, almost as though he was in the starry sky without the stars. A figure wearing a pig mask suddenly appeared 10 meters away from Yuan. A mask with a pig's face? This was the first thing Yuan noticed due to its oddity. I sense more than one soul within you. Unfortunately, they are not allowed to assist you even though they are your servants. The masked figure spoke, and before they realized, Xiaohua and the others were forced out of Yuan's body, and were transported to another platform where they could only spectate. Brother Yuan. Young master. Don't worry about me. I was going to do this by myself, anyway. Yuan smiled at them. He turned to look at the masked man and asked, What now? Before we begin, allow me to tell you the rules of the sword pagoda. First and foremost, if you die here, you will die for real. However, you are allowed to quit at any time during the trial. There are 7 total floors in the sword pagoda. In order to climb the sword pagoda, you must defeat the guardian on each floor, and you will be given a restriction on each floor including this floor. These restrictions will carry over to the next floor, so you will have a total of 7 restrictions placed on your body by the time you reach the 7th floor. Statistically speaking, only 1 in 10,000 will pass the first floor, 1 in 100,000 will pass the second floor, and 1 in a million will clear the third. However, after the 3rd floor, you are more likely to encounter a miracle treasure during a stroll than to pass them. Now on to your weapons. You are not allowed to use any weapons from the outside. We will provide you with one, and they are all on par with divine-grade treasures in terms of quality. Lastly, you will be given a choice for your reward if you manage to clear the floor after every floor. You have a minute to mentally prepare yourself before I start the trial. The masked man fell silent after that sentence. Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. A minute later, the trial for the first floor of the sword pagoda will now begin. A restriction has been placed on your body. I will make my first move in 10 seconds. Choose a weapon before then. Ding. Yuan suddenly felt as though he had mountains strapped to his back, nearly forcing him to his knees. This place might be even more dangerous than the 9 swords trial. Yuan swallowed nervously as beads of sweat continuously appeared on his face. A sword! He shouted a moment later. An ordinary sword appeared before Yuan the next second. Yet it exuded the aura of a divine-grade treasure. The masked man also wielded an identical sword in his hands. 8, 9, 10. The masked man suddenly sprung into action, and began clashing with Yuan. After a few exchanges with the masked man, Yuan realized something. The difficulty isn't my opponent. It's just the restriction on my body that's a problem. If it weren't for the restriction on his body, Yuan would have defeated the masked man in a single strike, but because the additional weight that was adjusted for him, even swinging his sword had become a difficult task that required all of his effort. If the first restriction is already this cruel, I cannot imagine what the other floors have in store for me. Yuan cried inwardly as he fought the masked man with sweat pouring from his pores. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1131. Published at 4th of February, 2023, 11:20 and 45 seconds AM. Chapter 1131. Chapter 1131 Sword Pagoda 4. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1131 Sword Pagoda 4. I've never seen the young master struggle so much in a fight. His opponent is also weak in comparison, only being at the peak of Spirit King. He would normally defeat such opponents without batting an eye, yet he's been struggling for over 10 minutes now. Feng Yuxiang sighed out loud, breaking the silence. Lan Yingying shook her head. Can you blame him? His movements are sluggish and stiff, almost as though there's something weighing him down. Brother Yuan will defeat Pig Face soon. His movements have gotten much better compared to when he first began. He's rapidly adapting to the changes in his body. Xiao Hua mumbled. Also, he's not using any of his sword techniques. It's like he's treating this trial as a training ground. Lan Ying said. That's the young master for you. Feng Yuxiang smiled. Indeed, Yuan was getting used to fighting with the restriction on his body. However, that isn't to say that things have gotten easier for him. As the restriction grew stronger as he got more used to it, almost as though it was growing with him. After another 10 minutes of non-stop clashing, Yuan finally managed to defeat the masked man without using any of his sword techniques. He could have used everything to defeat his opponent in an instant, but if he needed so much resources to pass the first floor, there was no way that he'd pass the later floors. Hence why he restricted himself even more by not using any sword techniques. This also allowed him to familiarize with his situation. Congratulations on passing the first floor. What do you want for your reward? Spiritual energy or a heaven-grade treasure? Yuan didn't immediately respond, as he had no need for either of these rewards. His cultivation was stuck at peak Spirit King until he upgraded his physique, and he had no use for a heaven-grade treasure. What if I don't want either of these rewards? Yuan then asked. You can forfeit these rewards and receive an even greater reward on the next floor, if you pass it. If you fail, the rewards on this floor will be forever gone. If you accept a reward on this floor, you can still choose the rewards on the second floor, but it won't be as good. Alright, I will forfeit these rewards. Yuan answered without even the slightest hesitation. Very well. I will now take you to the next floor. Yuan's vision flickered for a split second, and the man with the pig mask is now suddenly wearing a mask of a sheep's face. Welcome to the second floor. The trial will begin in a minute. The only thing Yuan could think about now was the second restriction. A minute later. Ding. Yuan looked down at his hand with wide eyes. The sensation of his sword had suddenly disappeared, but when he looked, the sword was still there. What's going on? Why can't I feel my sword? He wondered. The second restriction has blocked your sense of touch. You won't be able to feel anything except for pain. My sense of touch? Yuan now realized that even the sensation of the platform that he was standing on had disappeared, and it felt extremely awkward. One might think that losing your sense of touch isn't that bad, but without being able to tell when your foot touches the ground as quickly, it would instantly throw off one's balance and make movement techniques near impossible. This also affects how one wields and swings their weapon. What a pain in the ass. He sighed out loud. 10 seconds later, the masked man began his assault. Now that he's lost his sense of touch, Yuan's movements only became more awkward and unstable, and even the way he swung his sword looked different. If someone who did not know about the situation were to see him at this moment, they would think that he was drunk to the core. Yuan knew that it would be pointless to fight the masked man while in such an unstable condition. So he decided to spend as much time as he needed to get used to the restriction. After all, there was no restriction on how much time he had on each floor, so he could stay there for as long as he needed. 10 minutes, 20-30. In the blink of an eye, over 3 hours have passed since Yuan entered the second trial. During this time, Yuan did not go on the offensive even once and remained defensive. Once he got used to his new restrictions and could perfectly calculate the moment his foot touches the ground for all of his movements, he started to work on his sword and how he swung it. In the end, it took him almost 4 hours to adapt, but once he did, he started going on the offense, defeating the masked man and clearing the second floor. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? The choices remain the same: spiritual energy or a divine-grade treasure. Forfeit. Yuan responded instantly. Very well. I shall now transport you to the next floor. Meanwhile, Long Chun was already on the 4th floor. Unlike Yuan, who hadn't used any sword techniques up to this point, Long Chun blew away his opponents with his superior techniques from the 1st floor. Despite that, he was also struggling to defeat his opponents. After narrowly passing the 4th floor, Long Chun fell to his knees and muttered in a low voice. The person who created this place is such a sadistic bastard. Long Chun was someone who wasn't used to feeling the ground with his knees. In fact, he doesn't even remember the last time he was brought to his knees. I am one of the 4 dragons. There's no way I am going to let some nobody from the 3rd heaven defeat me. I am going to defeat the 7th floor, and become the first person to clear the sword pagoda. Just you wait. Long Chen gritted his teeth in frustration. He forfeited his rewards on the 4th floor, and climbed to the 5th floor shortly after. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1132. Published at 4th of February 2023, 11:20 and 43 seconds AM. Chapter 1132. Chapter 1132 Sword Pagoda 5. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1132 Sword Pagoda 5. Look! Someone's managed to enter the 5th floor. The spectators were in awe after seeing a sword light appear on the 5th floor. There were currently 10 light sources shaped like a sword within the sword pagoda, each representing a challenger. There were 6 sword lights on the 1st floor, 2 on the 2nd floor, 1 on the 3rd, and 1 on the 5th floor. It must be that silver-haired man from the upper heavens. What if it's that Xiaoyang? Impossible. If you saw what I saw a few days ago at the 9 Swords trial, you wouldn't say that. Someone suddenly said. What did you see there? That Xiaoyang. He managed to survive all 9 sword strikes from the 9 Swords trial. In fact, he came here right after passing it. This person who had witnessed Yuan's greatness at the 9 Swords trial revealed this information to these people. What? Such information greatly shocked everyone there, as they were all aware of the 9 Swords trial. Are you sure you're not farting? There's no way someone could have defeated that gruesome trial. If you don't believe me, you can go check the 9 Swords trial. It's probably in ruins right now. He's not lying. I was also there to witness it. Someone else there said. Thus, the name Xiaoyang began spreading in the nameless emperor's tomb. Upon entering the 3rd floor, Yuan was given another restriction. The already dim world suddenly turned pitch black, almost as though had entered the void. Yuan's body trembled as it instinctively knew what had just happened. The restriction on the 3rd floor had removed his ability to see, turning him blind and causing his bad memories to resurface at the same time. However, Yuan didn't despair, as he wasn't completely blind. In fact, he could still see perfectly. This is thanks to his divine sense, which allows him to see things even better than what he could with his bare eyes. Yuan began fighting with the masked man who had a rooster mask shortly after. Since this floor's restriction was pretty much ineffective against him, it allowed him to fight at the same pace as the previous floor. This restriction that forces one to constantly use their divine sense may not affect Yuan, who essentially has unlimited soul strength due to his soul cultivation technique, but it was deadly to the others, who will inevitably exhaust themselves from constantly using their divine sense, forcing them to rush through each floor as fast as possible. 2 hours later, Yuan defeated the 3rd floor. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between spiritual energy or 10 divine grade treasures. 10 divine grade treasures? Just how many treasures are in this place? Yuan wondered inwardly. I will forfeit my rewards. He spoke a moment later. I understand. Then I shall send you to the 4th floor. Waiting on the 4th floor was a figure with a goat mask. The very next second, Yuan lost all sensation in his left arm. So I can only use one arm now, huh? These restrictions are getting more ridiculous. He couldn't help but utter out loud. This is just the beginning, said the masked man before approaching Yuan with a movement technique. Although his cultivation remains at the peak of Spirit King, his movements are getting better, and he's also more aggressive than the previous guardians. Now that I only have one arm to fight with, I can no longer fight without any techniques. Fortunately, my dominant arm wasn't restricted. Vanishing Ghost's soundless blade. Due to the increased weight on his body and his crippled arm, he was unable to use his technique at full power. I can only exert about 20% of its power in my current state. Yuan sighed inwardly after seeing the effects. However, even at 20%, it was still quite effective against his enemy. Meanwhile, the people outside the Sword Pagoda watched as the sword light on the 5th floor disappeared. The door to the Sword Pagoda opened, and a silver-haired young man was sent flying out the next moment. Damn it! I was so close to defeating the 5th floor. Long Chun gritted his teeth in frustration. After cursing inwardly, Long Chun began sweeping the crowd with his divine sense in search for a certain individual. I don't see him. Is he still inside the Sword Pagoda? Long Chun looked at the Sword Pagoda to see 5 people on the 1st floor, 3 on the 2nd floor, and 1 person on the 4th floor. He turned to look at the group of people in the front and asked them, "Hey, did that Xiaoyang come out already?" They shook their heads. "No, you were the first to come out." "Then he's definitely on the 4th floor." Long Chun narrowed his eyes at the light within the Sword Pagoda. After taking a deep breath, he spoke in a loud voice supported by his aura. "Starting this point forth, nobody will enter the Sword Pagoda until Xiaoyang comes out. I will slay anyone that dares to disobey." What? It was an unreasonable demand from Long Chun, but nobody there could defy him. Who the hell do you think you? Some of the newer people there that didn't know Long Chun wanted to fight back, but they were quickly stopped by the others. Don't mess with him. He's some big shot from the upper heavens, and he can kill you with just his aura alone. When the newer people learned this information, they immediately gave up on arguing and became silent. One of many unspoken rules in the 9 heavens is that one should never mess with someone from a higher realm, because messing with even a servant could result in one's entire family being slaughtered, much less a big shot like Long Chun, who was exuding the aura of a young master from a powerful background. Thus, nobody else would enter the Sword Pagoda after Long Chun came out. Eventually, everyone else besides Yuan were outside, leaving him alone inside. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1133 Sword Tablet. Chapter 1133 Sword Tablet. Fuck. What's taking him so long? He's been on the 4th floor for 2 hours now. The spectators were getting impatient, as most of them had only expected to wait at most another half an hour before Yuan got kicked out of the Sword Pagoda. Even Long Chun couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside. What's he doing inside? The 3rd floor forces one to use divine sense due to the restriction, so it wouldn't make sense to prolong the fights. Even if he's not using his divine sense, the Guardian should be attacking him relentlessly, giving him no time to rest. To spend so much time on one floor, there's no way he's getting past the 4th floor. After another hour of waiting, the sword light on the 4th floor finally moved to the 5th floor. This shocked everyone there. He actually managed to beat the 4th floor after spending 3 whole hours there. No way. Long Chun, who knew very well about the restrictions, was even more baffled than the others. As someone who climbed to the 5th floor, he knew better than anyone there how unforgiving the Sword Pagoda was. And for Yuan to endure 3 hours on the 4th floor was nothing short of a miracle. What happened in there? I really want to see it. Long Chun's hands curled up into fists. Oh, if it isn't the Silver Dragon. Why are you just standing out here? Aren't you going to challenge the Sword Pagoda? A voice that Long Chun recognized suddenly resounded. He turned around to see a group of individuals approaching him from a distance. Of course, just like Long Chun, they were all from the upper heavens. I already went inside, he said in a calm voice, trying his best to hide his emotions. Really? Then why are you still here? Wow. There's someone on the 5th floor. These people finally noticed the single light in the Sword Pagoda. Why is there only one person inside? One of them asked. Because I am not allowing anyone to step foot inside until that person comes out. Long Chun said, and he continued. This includes you lot. You know who's inside the Sword Pagoda? I don't really know him since we've just met a few hours ago. Long Chun shook his head. However, he's definitely talented. Unbelievable. Did the Silver Dragon just praise someone from this lowly place? I can't wait to tell the others about this. This is an unprecedented event. I doubt they'll even believe us. This group of people started laughing. Long Chun sneered. You may mock him for his background, But none of you can compare to this person who came from the very background that you're currently laughing at. These people immediately stopped laughing after hearing such words. Hey, Silver Dragon, cut the crap. You really expect us to believe that someone from this dump is better than us? There's a limit to your lies even if you just want to mess with us. Long Chen glared at the person who just spoke while emitting killing intent. Cut the crap? Who the hell do you think you're talking to, Mushan? If you think I won't dare to kill you because we're down here, you're sorely mistaken. This person known as Mushan trembled in fear. I apologize. I accidentally blurted out something disrespectful to you because of your outrageous claim that someone from third heaven could possibly match us. Outrageous, huh? Is it really that unbelievable? Long Chen pointed at the sword Pagoda before continuing. I failed on the 5th floor, so this person who also managed to step foot on the 5th floor is at least as talented as myself. Hell, I would be surprised even if half of you get past the 3rd floor, much less the 4th. Mu Shun gritted his teeth in anger after hearing such words, yet he couldn't refute it. Nobody there could, so they all remained silent. Meanwhile, Yuan was already fighting the Guardian on the 5th floor with a new restriction, which completely sealed his movement techniques. Although he could still move his legs just fine, he might as well be considered his legs to be useless since he was only able to move around with the increased weight by using his movement technique. Now that he couldn't use any movement techniques at all, he would have trouble taking even a single step. Clang! 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 Despite the new restriction, Yuan still somehow manages to stay on his feet and repel the Guardian's attacks with the God of War's astral arts. It was as though Yuan had turned into a mountain with arms. Thanks to the God of War's astral arts, he was able to attack the Guardian without moving around too much, and each of his strikes would send the Guardian flying backwards. However, the Guardian was also relentless in its assault. Every time he gets sent flying, he would run at Yuan again without any pauses. The two of them would continue this kind of clashing for many minutes until Yuan barely managed to overpower the Guardian, defeating him in one strike. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between a massive amount of spiritual energy or 3 ancient grade treasures. 3 ancient grade treasures. Yuan sighed inwardly as he refused the rewards. A few moments later, he was sent to the 6th floor. Congratulations, you are the first person to step foot on this floor. The masked man was now wearing a monkey's mask. The 6th floor is a little different compared to the other floors. You will now be given 7 days to study this sword tablet. A massive stone tablet shaped like a sword suddenly descended from the void, landing in front of Yuan. However, there were no words on this sword tablet, just multiple deep cuts that seemed to have been left behind by a sword. All of your restrictions will be temporarily removed. They will return after 7 days, and you will also receive your 6th restriction then. Good luck. The masked man disappeared afterward. C1134 Studying the Sword Tablet. Chapter 1134 Studying the Sword Tablet. Heavens! He's managed to reach the 6th floor. I believe this is an unprecedented event. The spectators outside the sword pagoda were in an uproar when they saw the light on the 6th floor. A look of disbelief appeared on Long Chen's face for a brief moment before his eyes flickered with a vicious flame of various emotions. Awe, jealousy, shock, inferiority. So many feelings that he hadn't felt in a very long or ever surfaced at once, overwhelming him in his pride. The others from the upper heavens were also feeling similar emotions. Are you sure he came from this dump? How do you know he's not lying to you? One of them doubted Long Chen's claim that Yuan was someone from the 3rd heaven. I would have recognized him if he came from the upper heavens. Long Chen gritted his teeth. He could have easily disguised himself. Unless he consumed a pill made by the god of alchemy himself, there's no way I wouldn't realize it. Despite saying these words, Long Chen himself was beginning to doubt whether Yuan had come from this 3rd heaven or not. He was wearing the golden dragon robe, after all. Now that I think about it, there's no way he can acquire something like that in this place, where the royal dragon clan doesn't exist. But it didn't seem like he was lying when he said that he didn't come from the upper heavens, so where in heaven's name did this guy come from? While the spectators were still trying to get over their shock, Yuan was sitting before the sword tablet, silently staring at the sword marks on it. This reminds me of the sword marks in the mystic realm. Yuan recalled the nameless temple within the mystic realm, where he also met Lan Yingying for the first time. Inside the temple was a tablet with sword marks, and he learned sword aura after studying the tablet. The sword marks on that sword tablet. Lan Yingying mumbled in a low voice as she found the sword marks to have a familiar feeling to them. Do you recognize the sword tablet? Feng Yuxiang asked her out of curiosity. Not the sword tablet, but the sword marks on it. Although the pattern is different, the marks are almost identical to the ones on the Lord's tablet. Lan Yingying proceeded to tell the others about her first meeting with Yuan, and about the temple that she had spent the majority of her life taking care of. So it has something to do with sword aura, huh? I wonder what the young master is going to learn this time. Feng Yuxiang mumbled with an anticipating look on her face. Yuan would spend the next 24 hours staring at the sword marks without any breaks. Meanwhile, the people outside the sword pagoda were confused and filled with curiosity as to what was happening on the 6th floor. And the number of people outside had increased drastically once words began to spread. This could be a once-in-lifetime event, so people were rushing over to the sword pagoda. It's already been a full day since he entered the 6th floor. Just what is happening inside? This is the first time that someone has ever reached the 6th floor, so nobody can say for sure. Time passed quickly, and within the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed since Yuan entered the 6th floor. During the last 3 days, nothing significant has happened to Yuan. In fact, he was still trying to comprehend the sword marks. It's already been 3 days. Whatever secret is behind that sword tablet, it must be incredibly profound since it usually takes the young master no time to understand them. Feng Yuxiang sighed out loud. However, just as she finished her sentence, an explosive amount of sword aura suddenly gushed out of Yuan's body. What an immense amount of sword aura! Xiaohua mumbled in a dazed voice. Yuan's sword aura would only continue to intensify from that moment. On the 4th day, the sword aura around Yuan had become so dense that it could even be seen by one's bare eyes. And it took the shape of a sword, making it seem as though Yuan himself had turned into a sword. This is... Xiaohua's eyes flickered with excitement when she realized what was happening. What is it? Share your insight with the rest of us. Feng Yuxiang noticed this and said to her. Xiaohua sneered in a cute manner, silently refusing Feng Yuxiang's request. You little... Feng Yuxiang gritted her teeth in frustration, as she was really curious about Yuan's condition. Do you know anything? She turned to ask Lan Yingying, who was staring at Yuan with wide eyes. Lan Yingying shook her head. I have never seen anything like this before, but it feels familiar somehow. Meanwhile, there were now over 50,000 people surrounding the sword pagoda, all of them on the verge of insanity from the anticipation. Their curiosity piqued. Shit. What the hell is he doing in there? It's already been 4 days. Did he die inside or something? There's no way he's been fighting for the past 4 days. What do you think is really happening inside? Only time will tell. On the 5th day, Yuan finally closed his eyes and entered a state of trance. That's... Feng Yuxiang's eyebrows twitched upon seeing this familiar sight. He's experiencing enlightenment once again. Lan Yingying mumbled with a bittersweet smile on her face. Most people would be considered lucky if they experience enlightenment even once in their lifetime. Yet Yuan has already experienced it multiple times within a year. Towards the end of the 6th day, Yuan opened his eyes to be greeted by a notification. Enhanced Sword Aura. Enhanced Sword Aura. Description. Only those blessed by the Sword God could comprehend Enhanced Sword Aura. Allows you to convert your soul strength into enhanced sword aura. Significantly increases sword damage and sharpness. Chapter 1135. Published at 31st of January, 2023, 8:30 and 16 seconds p.m. Chapter 1135. 1135. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1135. Enhanced Sword Aura. After comprehending Enhanced Sword Aura, which is basically a superior version of Sword Aura that uses his soul strength instead of spiritual energy, Yuan's sword aura had reached peak masterly level, and his understanding for the swords also increased significantly. Grand Sword Mastery. Description: very few swordmasters have reached this level. Drastically improves your control with swords by 75%, and increases all damage dealt with swords by 150%. Your enemies will feel more pain from your sword attacks as your damage increases. Your sword techniques will also have more impact. Requires no activation. Brother Yuan really did it. He's learned enhanced sword aura. Xiaohua muttered with a look of disbelief and awe on her face. What? Enhanced sword aura? Feng Yuxiang exclaimed with a terrified expression on her face. What's that? Lan Yingying asked with her head slightly tilted to the right. It's not surprising that you don't know about enhanced sword aura, since that only exists in the upper heavens. Feng Yuxiang said, and she continued. Anyways, enhanced sword aura is basically the next level of sword aura. It's incomparably stronger compared to sword aura, and incredibly hard to learn at the same time. Xiaohua then spoke. Even in a place like the Supreme Heaven, where the most talented people in the 9 heavens gather, anyone that can comprehend enhanced sword aura before they are 100 years old are considered peak prodigies. Brother Yuan isn't even 20 years old. It's that amazing. Lan Yingying turned to look at Yuan with a look of admiration on her face. There's a saying that if sword aura can cut mountains, then enhanced sword aura can split the world into 2 parts. The fact that it hasn't even been that long since he learned sword aura is even more terrifying. Feng Yuxiang's body trembled before Yuan's unfathomable talent. If he's just your ordinary genius, that is. Lan Yingying smiled. He's the Lord's reincarnate after all. Something like this should only be natural. Feng Yuxiang then said. I don't know anything about this Lord, but if he can teach people enhanced sword aura just by leaving behind a few sword marks, I cannot even begin to imagine the level of swordsmanship had achieved in his past life. By the way, since there's enhanced sword aura after sword aura, I can assume that there is something even stronger than enhanced sword aura, right? Lan Yingying suddenly asked. Xiaohua nodded. Yes, but the amount of people that have reached such a level is so minuscule that it might as well be non-existent. Shortly after Yuan learned enhanced sword aura, the masked figure returned. Congratulations on learning enhanced sword aura. Your restrictions will return soon with an additional restriction. Yuan couldn't wait for the challenge to begin, as he was itching to use his newfound powers. The following moment, Yuan's enthusiasm dropped to 0 when all of the spiritual energy inside his body suddenly disappeared. The 6th restriction is cultivation restriction. Your dantian and all of your spiritual energy has been sealed off, so you're no different than a mortal now. The masked man said to him. He was already partially crippled before this. Now that his cultivation is sealed, he has truly become a cripple. Yuan despaired for a second before suddenly recalling the description of enhanced sword aura. My spiritual energy may be sealed, but my soul strength is untouched, and enhanced sword aura uses soul strength. I still have a chance. If he hadn't learned enhanced sword aura, even all of the talents in the world wouldn't help him pass this challenge. When Yuan held the Empyrean Overlord, he could immediately tell how drastically different the sword felt in his grasp compared to before learning enhanced sword aura. Even though I don't have any spiritual energy, I feel like I can defeat any opponent with this sword in my grasp. Yuan's body began emitting enhanced sword aura, creating this weird effect in the air around him that made it seem like it was constantly being sliced by a sword. In fact, if one closed their eyes and tried to sense Yuan, they wouldn't even sense a human presence, but an entity, a sword. Yuan stared at the masked man with a tranquil expression. Even though he had no cultivation and his opponent was a peak spirit king, he didn't feel pressured in the slightest. The challenge began a few seconds later, and the masked man immediately rushed at Yuan while swinging his sword that was covered in sword aura. Almost as though he was only taking a stroll, Yuan casually took a step forward while swinging the Empyrean Overlord. Fush! An invisible blade of enhanced sword aura flew towards the masked man, and clashed with his sword aura. The enhanced sword aura looked easy to dodge at glance, but when the target tried to dodge it, they immediately realized that escape was impossible, as the sharp pressure coming from it was strong enough to instill intense fear in their soul. making them feel as though they'd be cut into 1,000 pieces if they dared to move, so their bodies could only stiffen from shock and await its inevitable death. With a single strike, Yuan had cut down his opponent and defeated the Peak Spirit King without breaking a single sweat. Enhanced sword aura. How terrifying. Yuan mumbled as he stared at the Empyrean Overlord before showing a slight smile. Congratulations, you have defeated the 6th floor. Another masked man appeared before him. You are. Yuan narrowed his eyes at the masked man. Unlike the previous masked figures, this one didn't have any weird animal masks and looked more like the real nameless emperor. Let's have a proper conversation on the 7th floor. The masked man disappeared afterward. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1136. Published at 31st of January, 2023, 8:30 and 15 seconds p.m. Chapter 1136. 1136. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1136. Weapon upgrade. Will you choose a reward, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between spiritual energy or a mythic grade treasure. A voice tempted Yuan shortly after the masked man disappeared. Mythic grade treasure. Yuan swallowed nervously. He would be lying if he said that he wasn't tempted. However, there was still one more floor in the Sword Pagoda. If he forfeits such a reward on this floor, he could only imagine what he'll acquire on the 7th floor. I will forfeit the rewards on this floor, he responded a moment later. Then I shall transport you to the 7th floor now. Yuan's body was suddenly enveloped in a warm light before he disappeared from the 6th floor, appearing on the 7th floor. Outside the Sword Pagoda, over 100,000 people have gathered to witness the spectacle of Yuan reaching the peak of the Sword Pagoda. Heavens! He's alive! And he passed the 6th floor. That bastard really did it. He's reached the peak of the Sword Pagoda. The people there were all in awe. The Sword Pagoda is one of the most popular and renowned trials in the Nameless Emperor's tomb, so most of the people there knew the difficulty and its history. A legend is about to be born. Long live Xiaoyang. Some people there even began revering Yuan, treating him as though he was a god. The group that came from the upper heavens were dead silent at this moment, but all of them were thinking about one thing with serious expressions: that they needed to recruit this person who seemingly has unlimited potential at all cost. Regardless if he passes the final floor or not, he's still going to become famous. Once the seniors in the upper heavens learn of his presence, they will all go crazy trying to recruit him. Long Chen could feel his heart throbbing with excitement, as it has been a while since a genius at Yuan's level has appeared. Meanwhile, Yuan stood before the masked man on the 7th floor. Welcome to the peak of the Sword Pagoda. Are you my opponent for this floor? Yuan asked as he tightly gripped his Empyrean Overlord. The masked man shook his head. No, you won't be fighting me. This will be your opponent. The masked man took a step to the side, clearing the path and revealing the object behind him. Yuan raised an eyebrow when he saw what the masked man was referring to. There was a large boulder made of an unknown substance that resembled crystal, and there was a wooden sword stabbed into it. That's my opponent. What kind of joke is this? Yuan asked him. This isn't a joke. The condition to pass this floor is to pull out that wooden sword. As for your restriction, well, this test in itself is one. The rest of your restrictions will also be lifted. Good luck. Not that it matters at all. Seriously? Yuan felt that it was a little anticlimactic, but he didn't complain. He quickly approached the wooden sword and wrapped his fingers around the handle. However, before he exerted any force, the masked man spoke. Oh, before you attempt to pull the sword, I should warn you that you will only have one chance. If you fail, your body will explode, and you will die. What? Yuan wanted to release the sword, but he subconsciously pulled his arms back without releasing his grip on the sword. Sha. The wooden sword was pulled out of the boulder without any resistance. Yuan stared at it with wide eyes. Ahaha! The masked man suddenly began laughing out loud, causing Yuan to raise an eyebrow. I was just joking. You wouldn't have died, and the wooden sword has no meaning. Explain. Yuan frowned slightly. The moment you comprehended enhanced sword aura from the 6th floor, you've already completed the sword pagoda. There is no challenge on the 7th floor. Then what's the point of making a 7th floor? The masked man snapped his fingers, causing a hole to appear in the middle of the room. And inside this hole was about 3 inches of black liquid. Lend me the Empyrean Overlord for a moment. The masked man then said. Yuan summoned the sword and handed it over. The masked man looked at the sword with a nostalgic feeling in his eyes. It's been a while, buddy. He then submerged the sword in the liquid. What are you doing? Yuan couldn't help but ask. How do you feel about the Empyrean Overlord? Is it a good weapon? Instead of answering his question, the masked man suddenly asked one. Well, despite it being my second soul weapon, it's my most used weapon, and I have the most experience with it. When I wield it in my hands, it feels as though it becomes part of my body. It's powerful and easy to use. I don't have any complaints. Is that so? What if I tell you that the Empyrean Overlord is actually still in a dormant state? That it's not at its full potential? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise upon hearing such information. The Empyrean Overlord was crafted by a good friend of mine. He used the best materials in the 9 heavens, and it took him over 10,000 years to complete it. It could even be considered the best sword in existence. However, its power would have been too potent for you to handle at the beginning, so I purposefully sealed its power until fate brought you here. Wait. You're making it sound like you knew I was going to acquire it from the beginning, and that I would come here. Yuan frowned. The masked man lifted his mask a little, revealing his smile. Of course. That's just how our lives work. Fate isn't as random as it seems, especially when it's our fate. The Empyrean Overlord, the Nameless Emperor's tomb, the Sword Pagoda. All of these things are connected. You didn't come here by chance. You were guided here. By whom? Yuan swallowed nervously. You'll figure it out yourself eventually. Anyways, the upgrade is done. The masked man retrieved the Empyrean Overlord from the hole the following moment. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1137. Published at 31st of January, 2023, 8:30 and 14 seconds p.m. Chapter 1137. 1137. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1137. Awakened Empyrean Overlord. What do you think? The masked man handed the Empyrean Overlord that was emitting a totally different aura compared to moments ago back to Yuan. Yuan swallowed nervously before accepting the Empyrean Overlord. When he first acquired the Empyrean Overlord, there was always this feeling of it being incomplete to him, like it could be improved. It was a very minor feeling that didn't bother him, but it was there nonetheless. However, the moment he touched the upgraded Empyrean Overlord, he immediately realized why he had that feeling. He didn't think it was possible, but the Empyrean Overlord felt even more comfortable in his grasp, and there was even this sense of nostalgia from it. Don't be fooled by it. The masked man suddenly said. What do you mean? Yuan looked at him with a puzzled face. Its seal may have been released, but it's not fully awakened just yet. In order to fully awaken it, you'll need to feed it lots of spiritual energy. You can do that by killing magical beasts or other cultivators. Although it was blocked by his mask, there was a grim smile on his face as he spoke. Though it's still more powerful than the previous Empyrean Overlord even in its current state. Yuan stared at the sword until a notification popped up. Qi Devouring Blade. Activately devours the qi of your targets after a successful hit. A beautiful sword, right? The masked man asked. Indeed. Yuan nodded. The Empyrean Overlord and I have experienced and surpassed countless tribulations together in the past. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I wouldn't have survived many situations if it weren't for her. Her? Yuan raised an eyebrow. Why would he address a sword in such a manner? Almost like it had a gender. The masked man smiled. About that. You will learn about it eventually. Why can't you just tell me now? Because that would ruin the surprise and fun. All of you are like this. Yuan sighed. What's the point of keeping secrets to yourself? The masked man shook his head. Although we all share the same soul, I wouldn't say that we're all the same individual. At one point in all of our lives, we had a different personality and lived different lives, so you can say that we're all unique in our own ways. Even if we eventually recover our memories and become nearly identical, it's not completely the same. There's a slight difference, and that difference, no matter how small, makes us unique. Yuan felt some weight lifted from his heart after hearing such words. As he was always worried about returning to his old self, that he had no personality of his own. Anyways, the sword pagoda will collapse soon now that it has been cleared. The masked man suddenly said as he began walking towards Yuan. Here, take this. The masked man handed a key to him. What's this key for? I also received one from the Seven Swords trial. Aid as he retrieved something from his pocket. Here, take this before you leave. The masked man handed him a golden key. I also got a key from the Nine Swords trial. Yuan mumbled. What does it do? Collect 9 keys and go to the core of the tomb. Some of the answers that you seek will be there. Yuan was bewildered. He didn't expect the masked man to actually give him a proper answer. Then, are there any specific trials that I must pass to receive these keys? Yes, there are, but there's no need to worry about it and just do whatever you want in here. You'll eventually find all of them anyways. Are you saying this is the work of fate? However, before he could receive an answer, Yuan found himself teleported outside of the sword pagoda with Xiao Hua and the others returning to his body. Once Yuan was outside, he could immediately feel countless gazes staring at him, causing his body to naturally tense up. He looked around with a look of disbelief on his face, as there were tens of thousands of people there, and they were all staring at him with wide eyes. After a brief moment of silence, almost as though everyone there snapped out of their daze at the same time, they all began bombarding Yuan with questions. What happened on the 6th and 7th floor? Why did it take you a whole week to pass the 6th floor? What kind of rewards did you acquire? Did you pass the 7th floor? Why did the sword pagoda suddenly collapse? Shut up. A deafening voice filled with an intense pressure suddenly rippled, startling everyone there and forcing them to hold their breaths. A few seconds later, Yuan watched as a handsome silver-haired young man approached him with a group of new faces following behind him. I will keep this short since it would take too long if I said everything on my mind. Congratulations, Xiaoyang. Not only did you defeat me, but you've also become the first person in the 9 heavens to defeat the sword pagoda. As promised, I will now answer all of your questions. Long Chen said to him with a defeated smile. However, Yuan didn't say anything and merely extended his hand, almost as though he was asking for something. Long Chen chuckled when he saw this, as he immediately realized what Yuan wanted from him. He reached into his spatial ring and retrieved exactly 10 pebble-sized royal-grade spirit jade, before placing them on Yuan's open palm. The spectators watched while salivating, as these 10 small royal-grade spirit jades were worth over 100 million spirit stones easily. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1138. Published at 31st of January, 2023, 8:30 and 13 seconds p.m. Chapter 1138. 1138. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1138. Silver Dragon. Thanks, Yuan said as he tossed the spirit jades into his spatial ring. Long Chen cleared his throat and spoke. Now as for the questions you had for me. Yes, I am from the upper heavens. Specifically, the 9th heaven. The surrounding people gasped in shock when they heard this information. He's someone from the supreme heaven. No wonder why his aura is completely different. A real big shot. I'm so glad I risked my life to come to the nameless emperor's tomb this year. To think I'd see someone who came from the supreme heaven with my very eyes. While the spectators there mumbled to each other, Yuan remained relatively calm as he asked, "Oh, I didn't think someone from such a place would be interested in the nameless emperor's tomb. Surely, you're not here for the treasures? Long Chen chuckled. Of course not. The treasures here are as common as tableware in the supreme heaven. I can't tell you the exact reason why I am down here, but I am searching for a specific individual. But since we're essentially looking with a blindfold on, I decided to spend some time in this place. As expected, he's here to look for me. Yuan sighed inwardly. I see. Then I won't bother you anymore. Good luck with your searches. Yuan was prepared to leave as soon as possible since nothing good will come out of staying around these people who are on a manhunt for him. Wait a minute. How can you leave already? I still have so much to talk about. Long Chen quickly stopped him. If you want to talk, we can do so another time. This place may mean nothing to you, but it means everything to me, and unfortunately, our time here is limited, so I won't entertain you anymore. Such insolence. I can no longer ignore your arrogance. Who do you think you are talking to? One of the individuals behind Long Chen suddenly shouted. Yuan glanced at this person and casually said, Now that you mention it, I don't know. Care to enlighten me? This bastard. Stop. Long Chen glared at this individual with a serious expression. Ignore him, Xiaoyang. Once again, I am Long Chen, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes. Most people in the upper heavens call me Silver Dragon. Silver Dragon? So you're a dragon? Yuan asked, his interest piqued. Long Chen shook his head. Silver Dragon is just a title. One given to those who have been recognized as the most talented in our generation. Amongst the 4 dragons and phoenixes, only 3 of them are actually from the dragon clan. With that being said, I do have some dragon blood in me. In the supreme heaven, the surname Long is mostly reserved for those in the dragon clan, after all. Oh, so you're a half-dragon? Yuan asked with an intrigued look on his face. Hey, that's... The group behind suddenly had terrified looks on their faces when they heard the word half-dragon. Long Chen's eyebrows twitched as a reaction, but he remained calm. Since you're not from the supreme heavens, I cannot blame you for not knowing, but most people who do not have pure blood would charge at you for using that term. They consider it derogatory. Is that so? I will keep that in mind, and I apologize if I offended you. Long Chen shook his head. Anyways, I have had this question on my mind since I first saw you. His gaze lowered, staring at the golden dragon robe. Which dragon clan do you belong to? I don't belong to any dragon clan. What? Then where did you acquire that uniform? If it wasn't given to you by the dragon clan, I highly suggest you return it to them. If they learn that a human is walking around with the golden dragon robe, they'll hunt you down like a criminal on death row. Long Chen frowned. Then you don't have to worry. It was definitely given to me by the dragon clan. Although we're friends, I wouldn't say that I belong to their clan. Yuan said, unaware of the significance behind his outfit. Seriously? Which family would hand out the golden dragon robe to someone that isn't even part of the dragon clan? This will easily invoke the wrath of the other clans if they find out. Long Chen couldn't imagine something like this happening. After all, an ordinary family within the dragon clan wouldn't have something like the golden dragon robe, as only those with royal blood are allowed to possess the outfit. In the first place, there are no families with royal blood in the third heaven, so he couldn't have possibly gotten it from here. Is he lying about the fact that he didn't come from the upper heavens? Or is he lying about how he acquired the golden dragon robe? Long Chen pondered with a serious expression on his face, hoping that it was the former reason. After a moment of silence, Long Chen spoke. If you don't mind, can you tell me the surname of the family that gave you that robe? I know I am asking a lot of questions, but this is for your own good. Yuan nodded and responded calmly. Their surname is Xi. The Xi family? Impossible. Long Chen cried out loud after hearing this unexpected information. Yuan raised his eyebrows and asked, Why do you look like you just saw a ghost? Before I answer your question, allow me to confirm what I just heard. The family that gave you the golden dragon robe is the Xi family? Yuan silently nodded. Long Chen fell silent again. Are you going to tell me that they don't exist or something? Yuan asked. No. There definitely exists a Xi family with royal blood within the dragon clan. However, they have been missing for thousands of years now. Are you sure it's the Xi family? Xi Xingma. Yuan suddenly uttered the name of the Dragon Emperor. Long Chen's eyes immediately lit up after hearing this familiar name. That's the Xi family's Dragon Emperor's name. However, that isn't solid proof that he really met with them. Can you tell me where the Xi family is right now? He then asked. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1139. Published at 31st of January, 2023, 8:30 and 10 seconds p.m. Chapter 1139. 1139. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1139. Heading towards the Sword Temple. Sorry, but I cannot tell you their location. Although you say they're missing, they separated themselves from the rest of the world on their own accord, and they're living happily from what I saw. Yuan refused Long Chen's request without hesitation. They separated themselves? Why would they? Long Chen halted his mumble when he suddenly recalled the Xi family's history. The Xi family disappeared shortly after the Dragon Clan's war with cultivators many centuries ago. I guess they didn't want to deal with humans after what happened. He sighed inwardly. But this only created more questions for Long Chen. Why would the Xi family that despises humans give a human the golden dragon robe? This doesn't make sense no matter how I think about it. Anyways, I have entertained you for long enough. If you have more questions, save them for after we all leave this place. Yuan turned around and began walking away. How about I come with you? Long Chen started following him. He still had many questions and wanted to recruit Yuan to his side, after all. However, Yuan quickly turned around and held his arms up, pointing his palm directly at Long Chen's face. Please leave me alone. I already have enough company with me. Long Chen halted his steps and no longer followed Yuan. Yuan quickly escaped the crowd. There's too much attention on me. I will meet you guys a few miles ahead. Yuan notified the Tian family through divine sense as he flew away. I've never seen such an arrogant bastard before. He thinks he's above us just because he got lucky in the Sword Pagoda. I doubt he's actually that talented. The people behind Long Chen gritted their teeth in anger. How could someone from a backwater place like the Third Heaven possibly have more talent than us? He must have used some trick to beat the Sword Pagoda. Long Chen couldn't even be bothered by these people and merely remained silent, his eyes staring at the direction that Yuan disappeared to. Xiaoyang. What a mysterious fellow. Long Chen realized at this moment that he's never been intrigued by another individual to such an extent. Long Chen left the place shortly after. And when that happened, the other people at the Sword Pagoda went into an uproar. The Sword Pagoda has collapsed. What should we do now? I don't think there is anything we can do now. Heavens! He defeated not only the Nine Swords Trial but also the Sword Pagoda. A legend is about to be born. I must let the others know. The name Xiaoyang began spreading within the nameless emperor's tomb like a wildfire during a heatwave. When the big families and powerful sects heard of Xiaoyang and his feats, they immediately decided to recruit him to their side. We must find this Xiaoyang before the others and recruit him to our sect. A famous sect leader roared at his disciples. My daughter, I want you to meet with this Xiaoyang and bring him to our family at all cost. A renowned patriarch said to his precious daughter with an urgent expression. But father, you already engaged me to the Ming family. Screw the Ming family. This Xiaoyang takes priority. If the rumors are true, he'll definitely become a prominent figure in not just the Third Heaven, but the entire Nine Heavens. Some people in the nameless emperor's tomb shifted their attention to Yuan after hearing his achievements, treating him as though he was another treasure in the tomb that must be acquired. However, since the rumors sounded too good to be true, most people doubted it and decided to ignore it. Meanwhile, a dozen miles away from the Sword Pagoda, Yuan regrouped with Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin. You really dropped a lot of jaws back there, mine included. Tian Yinyu said as she stared at Yuan, still with a somewhat dazed look on her face. Tian Suyin remained quiet, her thoughts unknown. Tian Yinyu continued. I've been dying to ask you. What happened on the 6th floor? Why did it take you almost a week to pass it when the 7th floor didn't even last an hour? Oh, I was given a week to comprehend something. That's all. That's it. Although it's very different from the previous floors, it sounds boring. What about the 7th floor? What did it look like up there? Same as the other floor, empty and boring. What about the reward? You cleared the sword pagoda, right? Surely, the reward must be extravagant. Tian Yanya's eyes were essentially glowing from excitement at this moment. Yuan shook his head. Besides this key, I didn't really receive much. Seriously? Tian Yinyu was baffled after hearing this, and she looked like a child who just had her dreams crushed. Didn't you also receive a key at the 9 Swords trial? What does it do? Tian Suyin looked at the key with interest. Her instincts told her that the key would lead to something special. Indeed, but I don't know its purpose. I only know that I have to collect 7 more before heading to the deepest parts of the tomb. That's impossible even for you. Not even half of the tomb has been explored since it was discovered. Yet you want to go to the deepest area? You'll just be walking to your own grave. Yuan smiled. I think I will be fine. After all, fate brought me here. Fate. What a lunatic. Tian Suyin shook her head inwardly. Anyways, my next destination is the Sword Temple. Yuan announced a moment later. The Sword Temple is located at the border of the outer area. It'll take us 2 weeks just to get there even if we traveled there in a straight line without rest. Tian Suyin said. Yuan nodded. You don't need to follow me there if you don't want to. I don't want to waste your time either. Nonsense. We've already come this far. It would only be a waste if we stop here. And I'm sure that we'll get to witness something jaw-dropping again, so I won't leave even if you force me. Tian Yinyu quickly said. Yuan showed a defeated smile. All right, I won't stop you. They resumed their journey shortly after. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1140 Renowned. Chapter 1140 Renowned, plus 20 fame, plus 31 fame, plus 56 fame, plus 111 fame. Yuan noticed that his fame was increasing at a rapid rate as he traveled to the Sword Temple. This must be due to what happened at the 9 Swords trial and the Sword Pagoda. While he was glad to see his fame increasing, he still had no idea what kind of effect it had on him. And in just a few days, his fame reached over 100,000. Suddenly, an announcement appeared in the sky for all players to witness. Ding. Yuan's eyebrows lifted slightly after seeing the notifications. So fame unlocks new events. Now the only question is, where do I find these events? He wondered inwardly. Xiaoyang, let's take a break. Tian Yinyu suddenly turned to look at him. All right. He nodded. They stopped flying and started to look for an area where they could sit down to recover their depleted spiritual energy after flying for days without a break. Sometime later, they sat below a large tree. Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin immediately closed their eyes and began to cultivate. I should have a few hours. Yuan stared at them for a moment before silently logging off the game for the first time since he entered the Nameless Emperor's tomb. She's still inside, huh? Yuan thought to himself as he looked at Chu Liuxiang, who was laying beside him with her console on her head. He went to the bathroom and cleaned himself even though his body was sparking clean despite many weeks of not washing. After coming out of the bathroom feeling refreshed, Yuan left the room to check up on the others. And as usual, they could be found at the training ground behind the house, but there was only one person there. Yuan, what are you doing here? Have you already finished exploring the Nameless Emperor's tomb? Wang Ming spoke as he stopped swinging his sword, pleasantly surprised to see him at the training field. Yuan shook his head. No, not even close. I'm just taking a small break to stretch my body. Where are the others? They're all in. That's all we do after morning training nowadays. I'm staying here later than usual since I feel like having a breakthrough soon. As for your girlfriends in Jin Xi, they only show up once a week to exercise. Meishu appears a little more often to cook for us, but that has stopped since we told her to focus on her cultivation. The place has been really quiet as of lately with everyone focusing on their own things. Yuan nodded. That's good. And since I am already here, want to have a little spar? Wang Ming smiled. I would have asked you if you didn't. Yuan grabbed a sword and started sparring with Wang Ming shortly after. Some time later. Calm, you've improved a lot since our last spar. Yuan said to Wang Ming, who was lying on the floor while soaked in sweat. Yet I still cannot land a single hit on you. Yuan chuckled. You'll get there, but I won't make it easy. That's exactly what I want. Yuan chatted with Wang Ming for a little longer before he returned to his room. However, he still had plenty of time left, and he didn't want to return to cultivation online so quickly. Thus, he decided to play with the zither. After grabbing his zither from the closet, Yuan went to the balcony and began playing it. About an hour later, Meishio removed the console from her head and sat up on her bed to look at the clock. It's almost midnight. Her ears suddenly twitched when it heard a heavenly melody being played, which stimulated her body and instantly woke her up. This music. Yuan? She quickly went to the balcony before looking towards Yuan's room, and her eyes were immediately blessed by Yuan's handsome face that was enhanced by the moonlight as he played the zither elegantly. Meishio opened her mouth slightly only to close it without uttering a sound, as she did not want to disturb such a moment. A minute later, after playing the final note, Yuan rested his hand on the zither before turning to look at Meishio with a gentle smile on his face. Hey, it's been a while. Did something happen in cultivation online? Meishio couldn't help but ask the first thing in her mind. Everything is fine in cultivation online. I'm just taking a break. I see. Meishio didn't know what else to say. After a moment of awkward silence, Meishio subconsciously uttered, Want to come over? By the time she realized what Shed just said, Yuan already responded with a silent nod. I will be there in a minute. Let me put away the zither first. Once Yuan left the balcony, Meixia's face flushed with redness. A minute later, Yuan knocked on Meixia's door. Meishio quickly answered. Once they were inside the room, Yuan sat down and initiated the conversation. How is your cultivation going? Smoothly. I just entered the 7th level of Spirit Master before logging out. You're a Spirit Master already? It's only been a month. I guess this is what happens when you focus on cultivation. Yuan smiled. She nodded. The dense spiritual energy in the 3rd heaven helps a lot. Of course, my cultivation technique plays the biggest role in my growth. I'm not the only one. Chu Liuxiang and Li Jinxi have also reached Spirit Master. Chu Liuxiang reached the 5th level last week. Though the one with the most improvement is Li Jinxi. Even though she started much later than us, she has already surpassed us, reaching the 9th level. I think she'll become a Spirit Grandmaster soon. Li Jinxi is already at such a level? As expected of the #1 genius in the Jaded Garden. She's really talented. Yuan was pleasantly surprised by Li Jinxi's immense growth. What about you? How are things in the Nameless Emperor's tomb? Meishio then asked. A lot has happened. Yuan proceeded to recall his experience to her. C1141 Burst of Bloodlust. Chapter 1141 Burst of Bloodlust. And that's when I decided to take a break from. Yuan recalled everything he had experienced within the Nameless Emperor's tomb to Meishio, who listened with an intrigued expression on her face. However, after Yuan finished his story, the place became dead silent, as neither had anything else to say. The two of them proceeded to silently stare at each other for the next few moments. As it has been some time since they last saw each other, and it being the longest that they have been away from each other for a long time, things felt a little awkward between them. Meishio, Yuan uttered in a low voice, trying to start a conversation. Yuan. Meishio misunderstood his intentions and actually kissed him instead. Yuan didn't complain and closed his eyes, quietly enjoying the soft sensation of her lips. A few moments later, as her body started heating up with passion, Meishio began removing her clothes while she continued to kiss Yuan. Yuan did the same, and within seconds, they were both lying on the bed naked. I've missed this warmth. Meishio mumbled in a low voice. Yeah, me too. Yuan smiled. They would connect their bodies shortly after, and they would go on to spend the rest of the night cultivating with each other. Naturally, Yuan completely forgot about, and it wasn't until the following morning did he recall about the nameless emperor's tomb. I'm going to take a bath. Want to come with me? Meishio asked him after their passionate session. Sure. I completely forgot. What? Meishio looked at him with a puzzled face. I have been gone for too long. Tian Yinyu will be puzzled when she finishes her cultivation, and I am nowhere to be seen. I'm going to take a quick shower, and immediately return to. Sorry, Meishio. Yuan quickly rushed into the bathroom as he spoke. Don't worry about it. I am already lucky enough to see you during your brief break. Chu Liuxiang will definitely be upset to know that Shed missed you. Meishio chuckled. After a quick shower, Yuan rushed back to his room and logged back into. When he returned to the nameless emperor's tomb, Yuan immediately noticed that neither Tian Yinyu or Tian Suyin was there. In fact, the tree that they had been cultivating under was gone as well. What the hell happened here? Yuan exclaimed in a shocked voice after seeing the scenery around him. The ground around him was split, and it looked like a massive battle had just occurred in this area. Do you guys know what happened here? Where is the Tian family? Yuan asked his servants. Unfortunately, they did not know. Sorry, young master, but we didn't see anything. When you disappeared, our senses were blocked, and we couldn't leave your body either. Feng Yuxiang said to him. Damn. I should have left them behind to watch over the Tian family. I've screwed up. Yuan cursed inwardly, blaming himself for this situation. Yuan, use your divine sense and see if you can sense them. Lan Yingying suddenly suggested. Your soul strength is much more powerful than ours, so you will be able to see further than us. Right. Yuan immediately activated his divine sense to the maximum. I found them. He quickly found them with divine sense. They're 25 miles north, and they're currently fighting a group of people. He could see Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin currently being surrounded by a group of unknown cultivators that clearly had bad intentions, and Tian Suyin even appeared to be injured. Without hesitation, Yuan immediately began flying towards their direction, his aura filled with killing intent. Please let me make it in time. He prayed as he flew. Meanwhile, Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin stood together with their backs facing each other. Mother, are you okay? Tian Yinyu exclaimed in a panicked manner when she noticed blood flowing down Tian Suyin's right arm. I'm fine. Worry about yourself. Tian Suyin said while gritting her teeth. Tian Yinyu turned to look at the cultivators attacking them and shouted. Who are you guys? We are disciples of the Jade Sword Manor. Why are you attacking us? Two beautiful ladies traveling by themselves inside the nameless emperor's tomb. You're asking to be attacked. Ahaha. One of the cultivators laughed out loud. These cultivators were all wearing unique outfits, suggesting that they might not belong to any sect. Are you all rogue cultivators? You'll regret attacking us once our friend returns. Tian Yinyu roared. Your friend? Oh, I'm so scared. Ha ha ha. Nobody is coming to save you. Just give up and stop resisting. If you do, we'll make this painless, less painful for you. Save your breath, Yinyu. Tian Suyin said to her using divine sense. Listen to me. I am going to attract their attention. When that happens, I want you to run away. What? I'm not going to leave you behind, even if I am going to die. Tian Yinyu immediately refused. This is not the time to be stubborn. Tian Suyin roared back. Alright, enough bullshit. Let's just get this over with before we're interrupted. One of the rogue cultivators suddenly said. I call dibs on the mother. The young one's mine. It's first come first serve. Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin watched as 8 spirit lords rushed at them with vulgar faces. A burst of bloodlust suddenly erupted not far away, sweeping the place with a chilling ripple. This instantly halted not just the rogue cultivators, but also Tian Yinyu and her mother's movements. Their initial thought was that they'd somehow attracted the attention of a ferocious magical beast. However, before they could even think, one of the rogue cultivators suddenly shouted out in pain before he collapsed on the ground. The others turned to look at him with baffled expressions, and they could see a large hole had somehow appeared in the center of his face. Yinyu. Senior. Yuan's voice resounded a moment later. Tian Yinyu instantly turned to face the direction of his voice with a blissful look on her face. Xiaoyang. C1142 Massive Magical Beast. Chapter 1142 Massive Magical Beast. Mother, let's go. Tian Yinyu immediately began running towards Yuan the moment she saw him, and she grabbed Tian Suyan's arm before pulling her along. The rogue cultivators were still in shock from their companion's sudden death, so they couldn't react in time, and allowed the two of them to escape. We'll talk after I take care of the trash, Yuan said to Tian Yinyu as he withdrew the Empyrean Overlord. Almost as though it was responding to Yuan's emotions, the Empyrean Overlord's aura gushed like water at the bottom of a waterfall. Wait. The rogue cultivators subconsciously raised their hands to surrender. They could tell that Yuan was a spirit king, and that nobody there would be able to defeat him even if they all fought together. However, Yuan wasn't interested in sparring these cultivators and swung the Empyrean Overlord without hesitation. A powerful sword light strengthened by enhanced sword chi immediately flew towards the cultivators. Everything happened so fast that the rogue cultivators couldn't even escape if they wanted, so they had no choice but to try and block the attack. Unfortunately for them, their techniques were all destroyed as soon as they were deployed. Nothing could stop the sword light from killing these cultivators today. Sha. The following moment, the cultivators dropped dead on the ground with their bodies severed in half, their spiritual energy absorbed by the Empyrean Overlord. Awakening progress. 10.01%. Killing 8 Spirit Lord cultivators was only enough to increase the progress by 0.1%. As for the 10%, it actually came from the sword Pagoda, unbeknownst to Yuan at the time. Besides the Empyrean Overlord's awakening, the sword Pagoda rewarded Yuan with all of the spiritual energy had gathered from each floor. But since his body couldn't absorb them, it was absorbed by the Empyrean Overlord instead. Yuan ran back to Tian Yinyu and her mother after dealing with the rogue cultivators. Senior, you're hurt. Yuan quickly retrieved a pill for her injuries. Here, take this. I'm fine. Where the hell did you go anyway? Tian Suyin said as she accepted the pill. Sorry, I decided to look around while you guys cultivated. I shouldn't have left you guys alone. This is all my fault. Nonsense. Those rogue cultivators were 100% at fault there. Don't kick yourself for their actions, Xiaoyang. And thank you for saving us. I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if you didn't come in time. Tian Yinyu shivered just thinking about it. Anyways, I'm just glad that nothing serious happened to you. I won't leave you two alone anymore. I promise. Good. Because I am going to cultivate again to recover my exhausted spiritual energy, Tian Suyin said as she sat cross-legged on the ground. She'd used almost all of her spiritual energy to fight off the rogue cultivators, after all. Me too. Tian Yinyu also sat down and began cultivating. This time, Yuan stood guard for them while scanning the area with his divine sense until they were done. Sorry for the wait. Tian Yinyu finished a little faster than her mother since she had a lower cultivation base, thus less spiritual energy to restore. Tian Suyin opened her eyes 2 hours later. Once they were prepared, they resumed their journey towards the Sword Temple. Calm what? Yuan was just awake. Chu Liuxiang came out of her room literally 10 minutes after Yuan returned to cultivation online. Please visit. Yes. Meishio nodded, and she recalled Yuan's experience for her. I can't believe I just missed him. If only I had managed to break through a few minutes earlier. She sighed out loud. You had a breakthrough? Congratulations. Meishio said. And she continued, but even if you came out in time to see Yuan, he wouldn't have any time since he had to rush back into cultivation online. Chu Liuxiang narrowed her eyes at Meishio in a suspicious manner. You seem happy, a lot more happy than the last time I saw you. I bet you had a lot of fun with him today. Meishio chuckled. Indeed I did the whole night. Chu Liuxiang sucked her teeth. Well, aren't you lucky? Did he say when he'll take a break again? She then asked. No, but he did say that he will try to take breaks as often as possible. That's good to hear. A week later. There's something happening up ahead. Yuan suddenly warned the others. What do you see? Tianyanyu asked. There's a large group of cultivators currently engaged in a fight with this massive magical beast. Should we go around them? Tian Suyan's eyes flickered with a profound light after hearing this. No. That magical beast is an event. If we defeat it, we'll be rewarded. Are you sure? There are already people fighting it. If we enter now and steal their kill, they'll probably come after us. Tianyanyu said. There's no need to worry. Inside the nameless emperor's tomb, magical beasts are free for all, so it doesn't matter who is first to fight it. If they cannot kill the magical beast and someone comes along to take it from them, they can only blame themselves for not being able to defeat it fast enough. Is that so? Yuan mumbled. If he had to be honest, he had this urge to fight this magical beast the moment he laid eyes on it. And Tian Suyan's words only convinced him to do so. Alright, I'm going to take care of this magical beast real fast, and see what kind of reward I'll get from it. The two of you should stay far away just in case they attack me afterwards. He said to them a moment later. I understand. Tianyanyu nodded. A few minutes later, Yuan could see the magical beast's massive figure in the distance. Tianyanyu gasped in shock when she saw it. Heavens! Tian Suyan was just as surprised. I have seen plenty of magical beasts before in this place, but none of them could compare to this beast's size. Chapter 1143, published at 15th of February, 2023, 5:57 and 9 seconds p.m. Chapter 1143. 1143 If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1143 Massive Magical Beast, 2. This magical beast in the distance was as tall as a mountain literally. It stood on all four like a horse, had purple and silver scales, and it had a dragon's head. Furthermore, there was this long, black horn on its forehead, and it was currently shooting out purple lightning from it. This purple lightning scattered aimlessly, burning anything that it touched. The cultivators that couldn't dodge it immediately became burnt toast. What kind of monster is that? Tianyanyu exclaimed in a startled voice after seeing the massive magical beast. That's a purple lightning qilin. They're actually a lot smaller in the real world. Tian Suyan responded, her tone sounding a little stiff. The two of you should stay here. I will kill it quickly and come right back. Yuan said to them. Okay. Be careful. Tianyanyu nodded without hesitation. The last thing she wanted to do was to get any closer to that lightning-spewing monster. His monstrous body will just restore any damage inflicted to him. I bet he's actually immortal. Tian Suyan joked in a serious manner. Then I will be right back. Yuan waved at them before flying towards the purple lightning qilin that was running rampage in the distance. Watch out. It's going to shoot out lightning again. The cultivators fighting the purple lightning qilin were from different places. Some were disciples of a sect while others were members of a large family. Of course, there were rogue cultivators amongst the fighters, but they were mostly fighting alone without anyone watching their backs. Ah. Fuck. My leg. The bastards got my fucking leg. A disciple screamed in agony as he lost one of his legs to the purple lightning qilin's lightning, burning it to a crisp. Aim for its horn. If we destroy the horn, it should stop using its lightning attack. Another shouted. As Yuan got closer to the battlefield, he could witness with his bare eyes the carnage, where rivers of blood and mountains of corpses littered the ground around the purple lightning qilin. There has to be hundreds of corpses down there. He thought to himself, feeling shivers down his back. Once he was close enough, Yuan retrieved the Empyrean Overlord. However, he did not immediately enter the battlefield and patiently waited for his chance to strike. He also studied the purple lightning qilin's movements. Of course, people continued to die as time passed. As unfortunate as their deaths were, Yuan wasn't going to risk his own life to save these people like some sort of hero. These cultivators entered the nameless emperor's tomb with the resolve to die, and they did the same before they decided to fight this beast. About 10 minutes later, once Yuan was confident that he knew all of the purple lightning qilin's movements, he tightly held onto the Empyrean Overlord before flying towards it. The lightning attack may seem random at first, but it's not. It won't use it again for another 3 minutes, so this is my chance. Yuan appeared directly in front of the purple lightning Qilin the next moment, and his body released an aura that surmounted the massive beast before him. His Empyrean overlord also gushed with enhanced sword chi. This is going to be my first time using enhanced sword chi at its full power. After taking a deep breath, Yuan swung the Empyrean overlord at the purple lightning Qilin's horn. Sha! The black horn that threatened and killed hundreds of cultivators had been sliced off the monster's head cleanly. The cultivators there were in disbelief at first, but they quickly became overwhelmed with relief after realizing that they no longer have to worry about the lightning strikes. However, before anybody could celebrate, the purple lightning Qilin released a loud roar, causing its scales to turn crimson. Its eyes also turned bloodshot with red lightning sparking from within, and its body also started shooting out tiny red sparks that coiled all around its body, creating what appeared to be an armor made of lightning. A sense of dread suddenly assaulted Yuan, and his body instinctively moved. Boom! A massive red lightning strike suddenly descended from the sky, hitting directly where Yuan was flying. Arg! Yuan released a pained voice before slamming his mouth shut when the sudden thunder managed to strike his left shoulder, tearing his entire arm. However, this could be considered lucky for him. If he hadn't sensed the danger and moved in advance, the thunder strike would have struck his head, instantly killing him. The purple lightning Qilin released another deafening cry, causing more red thunder strikes to rain down. Fuck! It's enraged. Run for your lives! The cultivators scattered like ants when they saw the apocalyptic-like scene before them. Xiaoyang, Tianyinyu was terrified for his life when she saw the situation from afar. In fact, she had to distance herself even further as the area of the lightning strikes appeared to be growing with every passing moment. I need to finish this as soon as possible or it'll just get worse. Yuan thought to himself as he dodged the lightning strikes left and right while he waited for his injury to recover. However, with the purple lightning Qilin spamming lightning strikes non-stop, it would be incredibly hard to attack while dodging even if he was uninjured. Suddenly, a ball of flame shot out from his chest and flew directly at the purple lightning Qilin, engulfing its body in phoenix flames. I cannot sit back and watch it hurt you any longer, young master. Feng Yuxiang's voice resounded. Then a ball of white flames appeared, mixing itself with the phoenix flame, causing the intensity of the flames to skyrocket. The purple lightning Qilin stopped rampaging, and began jumping everywhere trying to extinguish the flames, but alas, its efforts were futile, and the flames of two divine beasts only became stronger. Thank you, you two. Yuan immediately took this chance to attack the monster. God of War's astral arts. After summoning his avatar, Yuan swung his sword at the purple lightning Qilin again, this time aiming right at the center of its body. Whoosh! The sword penetrated the scales with ease before cutting into its muscles, splitting its body into halves. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1144 Sword Temple. Chapter 1144 Sword Temple. After the purple lightning Qilin was slain by Yuan, its body immediately began decomposing at a rapid rate, until there was nothing but a single item on the ground, a purple key. Yuan picked up the key and thought to himself, is this what he meant when he said that I'd eventually find them no matter what? Is this a work of fate, or is this the tomb's doing? Brother Yuan, that wasn't a purple lightning Qilin. It was an ancient lightning Qilin, something that only exists in the seventh heaven and above. Even top cultivators in that realm have trouble dealing with it. Xiaohua's voice suddenly resounded. Have you encountered one before? Yuan couldn't help but ask her. Xiaohua isn't sure, she said. How are you not sure? Feng Yuxiang then asked. After a moment of silence, she spoke. Xiaohua's memories have been hazy lately. Memories that I don't recall have been appearing in my mind since we arrived in the third heaven. That is interesting. Yuan mumbled. If I recall correctly, all exiles have restrictions placed on them to make their climb to the upper heaven as hard as possible, such as their strength. Does this mean Xiaohua's memories have been restricted and such restriction is weakening as we move towards the upper heavens? Feng Yuxiang theorized. That does sound plausible. What do you think, Xiaohua? Yuan found such a hypothesis entirely possible. Xiaohua also thinks it's possible. This will also explain why my cultivation suddenly increased when we arrived in the second heaven and the third heaven. She agreed. If that's true, I wonder how strong you truly are, Xiaohua. Yuan smiled. Xiaohua blushed inwardly. Yuan returned to Tian Yinyu and Tian Suyin shortly after. Are you okay, Xiaoyang? It looked painful when you were struck by the purple lightning Qilin's red lightning. Tian Yinyu looked at him with a worried face, even though he looked perfectly fine. It was indeed a little painful, but it's not unbearable, he said. What did you receive from the purple lightning Qilin? Surely, it was an amazing reward. Tian Suyin was more interested in the reward. Yuan showed her the purple key and silently smiled. That's it. Tian Suyin was dumbfounded. He nodded. No way. These keys better lead to something heaven-defying for them to be considered as a reward. Hopefully. Anyways, let's continue with our journey. The three of them returned to the air shortly after, and started flying towards the Sword Temple again. A week later. Is that the Sword Temple? Tian Yinyu mumbled as a white building appeared on the horizon. It is. Tian Suyin confirmed. It's a lot more ordinary than I expected. The building itself was impressively large, but besides the beautifully detailed design exterior, everything was plain white. Calm, however, that was not what Yuan saw. While the others may only see an oversized white building, Yuan could see and sense that the entire building was overflowing with enhanced sword aura, so much so that it sent shivers down his back. Once he was close enough, Yuan could see a large group of cultivators standing around a tall platform in front of the Sword Temple, where two individuals were engaged in an intense match. So that's the sword trial. Yuan thought to himself when he saw it. This was something he'd read about in Jade Sword Manor's library. In order to enter the Sword Temple, one must participate in the sword trial and defeat their opponent first. The opponent is different for everyone depending on their strength and talents. If one fails to pass the sword trial, they will be denied entry to the Sword Temple, and everyone only has one attempt. According to the statistics, less than 1% of challengers have actually stepped foot inside the Sword Temple, and hundreds of thousands of cultivators participate in the sword trial every time the tomb opens. Tian Suyin said as they watched the sword trial from afar. The summoned spirits always have the same cultivation as the challenger, but their techniques are usually far superior. The opponents summoned by the sword trial are also addressed as spirits by most people. He lost already? It hasn't even been 2 minutes since the fight started. Tian Yinyu mumbled after the challenger was sent flying off the stage with one less arm that he entered the stage with. You'd have to be a genius to last more than 5 minutes against the spirits. That's how powerful they are, Tian Suyin said. The more I witness the Nameless Emperor's tomb, the more it feels like the odds are stacked against us. Just what kind of talent is the creator of this world looking for? Surely they didn't make it just to mess with us, right? Tian Yinyu sighed. The vast majority of cultivators create a tomb to pass down their legacy to someone worthy, but the Nameless Emperor's tomb is so difficult that it feels like the creator made it just to mock the challengers. Sorry. Yuan couldn't help but apologize to her inwardly, as this tomb was clearly created solely for him. Sometime later, they made their way towards the stage before splitting up again. Yuan went to the back of the line for challengers while Tian Yinyu and her mother went to stand with the spectators. A few hours later. Look at that young man in the center of the line. Isn't that Xiaoyang? A few people who'd just arrived after coming from the Sword Pagoda quickly noticed him. You're right. It's him. You mean the genius who cleared the Sword Pagoda? That's him. He looks so young. An uproar within the spectators quickly ensued, and it didn't take long before everyone was talking about him. However, the conversation didn't last long, as everyone had their breaths taken away by a group of newcomers. More specifically, a group of beautiful ladies that instantly stole the spotlight with their peerless appearance, especially the woman with an aloof expression in the front. Yuan noticed the sudden change in atmosphere and turned to look as well. She's strong, he immediately thought to himself after seeing the beauty in the front. C1145 Sword Trial. Chapter 1145 Sword Trial. The lady leading the group of beauties had long black hair, purple eyes with a hint of green, and slight makeup around her eyes. She looked incredibly beautiful but also threatening at the same time, like a rose with thorns. These ladies were also exuding an overwhelming aura that nobody there has experienced before. They were clearly all from the upper heavens, especially the purple-eyed lady, who had a similar aura to Silver Dragon Long Chun. However, unlike Long Chun, who was actively hiding his aura, this lady was letting it flow naturally. These ladies would watch the sword trial from afar, while mumbling to each other. It was unclear whether they planned on participating or not, but their presence was so heavy that it made focusing hard for the others. Eventually, people began leaving the line one by one, as they did not want to participate under such an atmosphere. Of course, there were a few that became more motivated since they wanted to impress this group of fairies. The line quickly grew shorter and shorter, until there were less than 100 people left. Yuan quickly reached the front of the line, but right when it was his turn to enter the stage, the group of fairies began to move. The group landed in front of him and blocked off his path to the platform while their leader, the purple-eyed beauty, flew onto the stage. "Wait if you don't want to die a pointless death," one of them said to him. Yuan didn't want to argue with them, so he remained silent. "Good luck, Senior Apprentice Sister Tang. You'll clear this silly trial with ease." These girls began cheering for the purple-eyed beauty, who was surnamed Tang. Shortly after the fairy Tang entered the platform, an array formation in the shape of a circle appeared on the other side of the platform, and a figure would emerge from this circle a moment later. As usual, this figure was wearing a mask, and they had the cultivation of a peak spirit king. Fairy Tang kept the same aloof expression on her face, seemingly unfazed by her opponent. She proceeded to make the first move, by pointing her finger at the masked figure. "Scatter," she uttered in a low but confident voice. Whoosh! Thousands of purple-colored flower petals suddenly appeared out of thin air, and flew towards the masked figure. A sweet scent filled the air when the flower petals appeared, but when the surrounding cultivators sniffed this scent, their consciousness immediately began fading, and those with a lower cultivation could even feel a numbing sensation in their body. This is poison? Although the poison wasn't effective on him, it wasn't completely ineffective, either. After all, while his body could take a hit from a spiritual treasure and not receive a scratch, it didn't have much resistance to poison. The purple flower petals quickly clashed with the masked figure like a tidal wave, and consumed their entire figure. However, a powerful wave of sword aura suddenly rippled in the area, instantly destroying the thousands of flower petals. Che. As expected, poison won't work on them. Fairy Tang sucked her teeth in an annoyed manner before she retrieved her weapon, a very thin sword that resembled a rapier, and her body also began radiating with sword aura. The sword aura released by Fairy Tang was impressive, but it wouldn't hold a candle to Yuan's sword aura. However, Fairy Tang still managed to defeat her opponent after 25 exchanges. Heavens! That fairy defeated her opponent within 25 strikes. I don't think I have seen anyone defeat the summon in less than 100 strikes. The spectators were filled with awe after witnessing Fairy Tang's performance. As expected of Senior Apprentice Sister Tang, her group cheered. The other girls in the group proceeded to enter the stage one by one until all of them challenged the sword trial. In the end, all of them passed the trial, but their results greatly differed from each other, ranging between 50 strikes to 100 strikes to defeat their opponent. Heavens! I have never seen so many people pass the trial back to back. To think 7 people participated and 7 passed. Truly a spectacle. Once the whole group of beauties finally finished, Yuan made his way up the platform. "Let's head inside the Sword Temple, Senior Apprentice Sister Tang," the girls said to her. However, she remained unmoving as her gaze was fixated on the platform. The girls turned to look at Yuan, and wondered why she was interested in his match. Although he's a little handsome, I don't see anything special about him. What do you see in him? Senior apprentice Sister Tang. Since Yuan had changed out of his golden dragon robe to attract less attention from people like them, he no longer looked as special. Look around us. He's the only one who doesn't seem affected by my poisonous scent. Fairy Tang spoke in a calm voice. When she mentioned this fact, the others also noticed this phenomenon. You're right. But is it really that weird? It's not like you're purposefully trying to harm them. Perhaps I am thinking too much about it. Let's go. Fairy Tang said as she turned around. However, before she could even take 2 steps, her entire body froze when a tyrannical pressure suddenly appeared in the area. Who's exerting this pressure? The others were also baffled by this anomaly. They all subconsciously turned to look at the platform. It must be that masked figure. She's the cause of this pressure. Wait, this masked figure is a female? Indeed, standing on the platform about a dozen meters away from Yuan was a masked figure, who was clearly a woman with feminine body, but the most damning evidence were the 2 large peaks on her chest. A masked figure that is a woman. I've never even heard of this before. The spectators were just as surprised as the group of fairies. Yuan narrowed his eyes at this masked figure. Had watched hundreds of matches before his own, yet none of them had a female opponent, so why did he summon one? Chapter 1146. Published at 26th of February, 2023, 6:48 and 24 seconds AM. Chapter 1146. 1146. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1146. Sword Trial. 2. After being summoned, the female masked figure started looking around with interest, almost as though she was inspecting her surroundings, a behavior that none of the previous spirits have shown. Her gaze eventually stopped on Yuan, and after a moment of silence she spoke in a clear voice. This is the first time I've been summoned since the creation of this place. What's your name? As she's having a conversation with her opponent? The spectators were beyond shocked by this. The spirits in the sword trial have never spoken a single word before. This is the first time it's a woman too. My name is Xiaoyang. Yuan introduced himself. Really? To his surprise, the female spirit questioned his answer, almost as if she didn't believe him. I don't like liars, you know, she continued. Yuan decided to remain silent. Well, whatever. Anyways, are you ready to fight me? I hope you can entertain me. Yuan immediately retrieved the Empyrean Overlord. The spirit's body trembled when she saw the beautiful sword in his grasp. Why do you have that sword? The spirit muttered in a low voice that sounded to be in disbelief. 'Cause it's mine, he calmly responded. Bullshit. The spirit suddenly roared, and a tyrannical aura exploded from her body, causing the spectators to scatter away from the platform. That's my master's sword. How dare you defile it with your unworthy hands? Before Yuan could even respond, the female spirit suddenly sprang into action, rushing towards him as a large greatsword appeared in her grasp. Boom! A powerful shockwave appeared when their swords clashed, and Yuan was actually pushed back by the spirit. When he stabilized himself, he could feel his entire arm shaking. Shit! What terrifying strength! Yuan cried inwardly, and he realized that this could be the most difficult challenge he's faced in this place yet. Die! The spirit did not spare Yuan any time to think, and continued to rush at him with her attacks growing stronger with every strike. Clang! 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 The spirit eventually started using sword aura, causing ripples filled with sword aura to scatter everywhere, destroying the platform and the surroundings. Heavens! What am I witnessing? The group of fairies from the upper heavens were baffled by the fierce battle, something they thought could only happen in the upper heavens, especially Fairy Tang, who was in disbelief for another reason. How did he manage to summon an opponent who is far stronger than mine? Fairy Tang wondered to herself why her spirit was inferior. The difference between Yuan's opponent and her own. They couldn't even be compared. As far as I know, the sword trial adjusts the spirits based on the challenger's talent. Does this mean the sword trial believes that my talent is inferior to that man's talent? That I am inferior to a nobody from the third heaven? Impossible. Fairy Tang gritted her teeth in frustration. Her existence has always been compared to the others since birth, yet she's always at the top, even when compared to those from powerful families, so she could have never imagined that she'd feel inferior to someone that isn't even from the upper heavens. As time passed, the spectators would become more and more speechless. Heavens! They have been going at it for hours now. It's not weird for the spirit to not get tired, but that young man is a different story. Just how much energy does he have? Although it may seem like Yuan has unlimited energy like the spirit, it isn't as simple as that. His body, from his muscles to his bones, are damaged and destroyed with every exchange, but due to his perfect regeneration, it completely heals itself before the next exchange. Of course, even if his body is fine, one's mental state usually degrades as a fight prolongs, but due to Heaven's indomitable soul, his mind that is affected by soul strength not only refreshes itself, it also grows stronger with every second. Therefore, if he isn't damaged faster than he could heal, and if he doesn't use too much soul strength at once, he could potentially fight for an eternity without any breaks. The female spirit, who had been cursing Yuan non-stop at the beginning, also became quiet. Minutes turned to hours, and hours turned to days. In the blink of an eye, Yuan and the spirit had been fighting each other for 5 days straight now. More and more people have shown up at the place just to witness their legendary fight, including the Silver Dragon, who rushed over after hearing the news. How long have they been fighting? One of the newcomers asked. They've been at it for 5 days now. F5. Are you messing with me? There's no way anyone can fight that long with such intensity. You don't have to believe me. You can ask the others. Meanwhile, Silver Dragon Longchen hovered in the air with a pondering expression on his face. They've been fighting at this pace for 5 days now, yet neither of them are using their full strength. That Xiaoyang, is he using that spirit for training? Even if that's the case, why is the spirit going along with him? He wondered, as he thought that the spirits were meant to defeat the challengers as soon as possible. It was at this moment that he noticed the group of beauties standing near the entrance of the Sword Temple. So she's also here, huh? A smile appeared on his face when he saw the expression on her face. He didn't think he would ever get the chance to see such a sight. So even the Poison Phoenix can feel jealousy. What a surprising find. He approached her a moment later. However, Fairy Tang didn't sense his presence until he was right beside her. It's been a while, Poison Phoenix. Silver Dragon greeted her with a somewhat cheeky smile. Fairy Tang glared at him with a cold gaze as she spoke. What do you want, Silver Dragon? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1147. Published at 26th of February, 2023, 5:30 and 12 seconds p.m. Chapter 1147. 1147. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1147. Sword Trial 3. Upon sensing the Poison Phoenix's unwelcoming aura, Silver Dragon remained calm as he chuckled. I don't really want anything from you. Then why are you bothering me? Go away, as far as possible, until I cannot see your annoying face with my divine sense. Poison Phoenix coldly sneered. Even though I don't need anything from you, I couldn't help but notice you staring at my friend very intently. Silver Dragon said, still with a smile on his face. Poison Phoenix's expression changed drastically after hearing his words, and she quickly asked, your friend? You know that man? Oh, am I thinking too much, or is the Poison Phoenix, who is prominent for having no interest in anything, actually interested in someone, a man, at that? Silver Dragon spoke in a teasing voice. Poison Phoenix began emitting killing intent. If you value your life, you better watch your mouth when you speak to me, you half-breed dragon. Her words wiped the smile off Silver Dragon's face, who also started emitting killing intent. The ladies with Poison Phoenix shuddered at their clashing killing intent. But the 4 dragons and phoenixes often fought with each other due to their rivalry nature, so they weren't surprised at all. Humph. Silver Dragon was the first to retrieve his killing intent. Forget it. I'm not going to fight with you here, especially since it will disturb the sword trial. You know what happens if someone disturbs an ongoing challenge in this place, right? I'm not stupid like you. Poison Phoenix also retracted her killing intent. There was a strict rule that everyone must follow while inside the Nameless Emperor's tomb. This rule prohibited anyone from disturbing an ongoing trial. Those who violate this rule will be executed on the spot. However, even though most people know this rule, there will also still be those who are either ignorant or don't care about the rule. Why the fuck is he taking so damn long? Can't he see that there are other people waiting to take the trial? Does he think we have an unlimited amount of time in this place or something? A bulky man with long wavy hair and a crusty beard suddenly jumped out of the crowd and towards the platform. If you're going to take your sweet-ass time, I'll end this for you right now. Stop. What do you think you're doing? The spectators there shouted at him to stop, but nobody dared to physically intervene. Once the bearded man was about 50 meters away from the platform, an unfathomable pressure suddenly that could only be felt by the man appeared, and it halted the man midair. It's over for him. What an idiot. The spectators merely shook their heads upon seeing this. The next second, the bearded man's expression became filled with horror as his body began twisting like a pretzel stick until it could no longer withstand the pressure and burst like a balloon. Strangely enough, there was no blood or meat showering the crowd below, almost as though his body was made of air. A second after the man's gruesome death that was witnessed by all, a profound voice resounded in the head of everyone there excluding Yuan. Without exception, those who dare to disturb the trial will be executed. This voice that was backed by an unfathomable strength sent chills down their spine with some even falling on their butt. The creator of this place is truly something else. Silver Dragon mumbled with a nervous smile on his face. Hey, how do you think he would fare against the peak experts in the Supreme Heaven? He turned to look at Poison Phoenix. Why are you still here? Get lost. Silver Dragon shrugged and turned around to leave, but he stopped again after 2 steps. Oh, right, do you still want to know about that man? He turned to ask her. Scram. Poison Phoenix growled in a low voice. However, instead of leaving, Silver Dragon decided to stay and start speaking without looking at her, almost as though he was talking to himself. Honestly, I don't know much about him either. His name is Xiaoyang, and we met not long ago at the Sword Pagoda. When Silver Dragon started talking, Poison Phoenix acted like she couldn't care less, but she was actually listening with interest. Silver Dragon spoke about how they met and Xiaoyang's achievements at the Sword Pagoda. Meanwhile, on the platform, Yuan was still focused on his training using the spirit. Since the spirit doesn't seem to have any intentions on defeating him as soon as possible, he wanted to take this chance to train himself, especially since he rarely encounters a powerful opponent like the spirit. As for the spirit, she knew very well what Yuan was trying to do, but she didn't care about it, as this was her first time being summoned since the creation of the Nameless Emperor's tomb. And as a battle junkie herself, she wanted the fight to last as long as possible. However, she eventually couldn't be satisfied with their current pace, so she began increasing her power and speed to make things more entertaining. If I increased the pace by another 15%, would he be able to keep up? The spirit wondered inwardly. But before she could even decide, Yuan suddenly decided to speed up the pace by another 20%. This caught the spirit by surprise, causing her to miss one of Yuan's strikes for the first time. Crack! The tip of Yuan's sword only managed to brush against her mask, but due to the sword aura surrounding the blade, it damaged the mask just enough to cut a portion off. The spirit stopped fighting and stood still after she realized what had just happened. You little bastard! How dare you damage my mask? The spirit spoke in a cold voice before she proceeded to remove the rest of the mask, revealing her face to the crowd. Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after seeing her face, and he subconsciously muttered, Jin Xi? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1148 Jin Xi. Chapter 1148 Jin Xi. To say Yuan was surprised to see Li Jinxi's face behind the mask of the female spirit would be an understatement. Ha! Yuan stared at her with a baffled face. Your name is Li Jinxi? Yuan asked for confirmation. After snapping out of it, he said, You're mistaken. I don't know you, but you do resemble someone that I know. And even your name is quite similar. Yuan immediately got into position and prepared to clash with her again. Despite that, almost nobody there knew what they were sensing. And only those from the upper heavens had an idea. Poison Phoenix gritted her teeth in frustration. Even though she doesn't have enhanced sword aura herself, she was experienced enough to understand it when she senses it. Seeing Yuan's dazed face, a cheeky smile appeared on Jin Xi's face, and she spoke. Don't tell me this is enough to make you quit? Hardly. Yuan chuckled before activating his own enhanced sword aura, but since had only recently learned it, it was a little inferior to Jin Xi's enhanced sword aura. Someone from the third heaven really managed to comprehend enhanced sword aura? If had been born in the supreme heaven, just how terrifying would he be right now? He wondered inwardly. Clang. When the spectators noticed that their clothes were being cut by an invisible force, they immediately started running away from the stage. Ha! This is what I am talking about. Jin Xi's laughter echoed loudly. Jin Xi's movement would become faster and faster, and her sword techniques would become sharper and fiercer. Because of this, Jin Xi would land a few hits on him, but his injuries would heal almost instantly. The two of them would continue at this pace for a few more hours. Even though Jin Xi was seriously trying to win at this moment, she couldn't deal any significant damage to Yuan, and it only got harder to hit him as time passed, as Yuan was improving at a rapid rate. I think it's about time that we end this. Thank you for the training, Jin Xi. Yuan said to her before his aura exploded. Perhaps Jin Xi had the power to defeat Yuan, but because she was only a mere spirit, her strength was limited, and she was destined to be defeated by Yuan today. Jin Xi's face was filled with disbelief for her last few moments before her body disappeared into thin air. I should have asked her about her relationship with my incarnation before I defeated her. He sighed inwardly after realizing this missed chance. He turned around, and to his surprise, Jin Xi had reappeared again. Indeed, you have passed the trial. Jin Xi confirmed. Is there a reason why I cannot be here? She responded with a question. In the first place, don't compare me with the other spirits. I have a consciousness of my own, even if it's artificial. Jin Xi then said. She nodded. Something like that. No, I still have some questions for you after all. Yuan smiled. Everybody there watched as Jin Xi, a spirit, left the platform for the first time. As they both approached the sword temple, a group of figures suddenly appeared out of nowhere to block their path. Hello. Yuan said to the group with raised eyebrows as he wondered what they wanted from him. Renewal. C1149 Poison Phoenix. Chapter 1149 Poison Phoenix. Can I help you? Yuan asked the group of beauties standing before him. Yuan raised his eyebrows. This caught the girl who just spoke off guard. I am Tang Meili, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes, also known as Poison Phoenix. You've heard of us, right? Yes, I have heard about you guys before. So, how can I help you, Poison Phoenix? And she continued. Anyways, my Tang family happens to be hiring more servants. Although you don't really qualify at this moment, I'm willing to make an exception. Become my servant. After snapping out of it, he chuckled. Are you always like this? Yuan showed a daring smile. There you go again. How can you say such words with such a calm face? There should be a limit to one's arrogance. Even if you came from the upper heavens, you don't own everyone here, so don't act and speak like you do. How dare you? You think you're untouchable just because you are a little talented. I'll show you. The girls with Tang Meili exploded with anger before she could even respond. It was Longchen. Calm down. I will calm down after I cut off his tongue. One of the girls said as she leaped forward and swung her weapon at Yuan's face. Longchen quickly reacted by deflecting the attack. Ah. The girl who clashed with him was sent flying backwards. Let's attack him together. Even he cannot defeat all of us while his cultivation is restricted to Spirit King. Someone suggested. The place became silent again. Humph. Tang Meili sneered at his words and she said, I don't have any business with you today, Silver Dragon. Long Chen didn't try to stop her since he didn't feel any killing intent from her, but he still kept an eye on her just in case. I will only ask you this one time. Are you sure you don't want to serve me? My Tang family is one of the top 10 families in the Supreme Heaven. Although you will only be a servant, nobody would dare to mess with you. If you put in enough work, you might even be allowed to learn our family techniques. Thank you for the offer, but I will have to refuse. Yuan responded without needing to think about it. When she opened them, they were resolute and emitted a ruthless aura. Tang Meili's words implied that she was going to destroy him, but she didn't do that and simply turned around and began walking away. I'm not the type that enjoys stepping on ants, but I will kill him if he ever dares to step foot in the Supreme Heaven. Tang Meili said in a cold voice. Yuan looked at her with slightly widened eyes and said, You're going to let them attack me? What kind of guide are you? Yuan turned to look at Long Chen, who was silently smiling at him. Long Chen shrugged. I can't speak for everyone, but that's how many people in the Supreme Heaven view those from a lower realm. After all, even beggars up there have a higher cultivation than everyone down here. Though, the poison phoenix showed a lot of restraint back there. Normally, she'd kill anyone that dares to talk back to her. A cold smile appeared on Long Chen's face as he replied. Of course you're all nothing but ants in my eyes. In your current state? Yes you are. I don't mean to sound conceited, but even with my cultivation restricted, I can easily crush you with a single finger. You may have potential, but that's all you are right now, potential. Long Chen continued. You are probably thinking that you have a few cards up your sleeve since I haven't seen you fight at 100%, but the same goes for you. Long Chen was slightly shaken when he noticed Yuan's unwavering eyes. However, before he could even say anything, Yuan had already left his side and entered the sword temple. Since he has yet to pass the sword trial, Long Chen could only watch as Yuan's back disappeared into the building. C1150 Sword Temple. Chapter 1150 Sword Temple. As I thought, it's dangerous for me to be around these people from the upper heavens. They're nothing but trouble. Yuan sighed inwardly as he entered the Sword Temple with Jin Xi. What kind of place is the Sword Temple? This seems different from what I've read about. Yuan asked out loud. Even if he couldn't see her, he could feel Jin Xi's presence beside him. Yuan didn't say anything else and proceeded to wait for something to happen. However, when nothing happened even a few minutes later, he spoke again. So, what am I waiting for? Should have said so earlier. Yuan sighed. Hey, can I ask you some questions? Yuan decided to start a conversation while they waited. The one you address as master, is he the creator of this tomb? He was pretty confident he already knew the answer to this question, but he wanted to be sure. She spoke in a bragging manner. Servant? What an outrageous assumption, you asshole. What made you think I was serving him? I call him master because I am his disciple, she exclaimed, sounding quite offended. Yuan was surprised. He didn't expect to have disciples in his past life. Though if he thought about it, it wasn't too shocking. No, master wasn't the type to stay in one place for long. He's always traveling. Even if he did, he wasn't exactly sect master material. Then how did you end up as his disciple? Jin Xi fell silent for some reason. Then tell me about him. What kind of person was he? Yuan asked. And she continued. First of all, where did you get that sword from the sword trial? So you even know its name. Is that so? And it accepted you as its master, right? Who are you really? She then asked. Don't give me that shit again. Your real name? Earth? Never heard of it. As ridiculous as it sounded, Jin Xi didn't call him a liar, almost as if she knew. Fate brought me here, I think. What's wrong? Yuan asked. Really? Can you tell me about him? The creator of this place is shrouded with countless mysteries after all. Well, you do now. Yuan smiled inwardly. Master learned sword aura at a young age and mastered enhanced sword aura before he even turned 30, earning him the title of Godly Sword Emperor. He is also the first and only person to have ever reached the level of whatever is beyond enhanced sword aura. Did something happen? Yuan decided to dig deeper. Is that so? Then do you know why he created this place? Master's thoughts are too profound for someone like me. All I am good for is swinging the sword. He wanted to say something, but his attention was stolen by a white glow that had suddenly appeared in the distance. You're about to find out, she said. The white glow that started out as a small dot quickly expanded until it consumed all of the void, turning the entire place white. Thud, thud, thud. Jin Xi's eyes slowly widened as she recognized this familiar sound. Master. The masked man stopped in front of Yuan. Welcome to the Sword Temple, he said. Chapter 1151. Published at 17th of March, 2023, 7:13 and 39 seconds AM. Chapter 1151. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1151. Divine Gaze. So, what are you going to make me do now? Yuan asked the masked man, who stood before them with his hands clasped behind his back. However, the masked man didn't say anything and merely took a seat in the lotus position, and he would remain as still as a rock without uttering a single sound for the next few minutes. This caused Yuan to raise his eyebrows. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for or how long this would take. Are we still waiting for something to happen? He decided to ask Jin Xi, who looked at him with a slight frown. Seriously? The trial has already started, she said, taking him by surprise. What? Where? What's the rules? He continued asking. Jin Xi pointed at the masked man and said, figure it out yourself. After saying that, she returned to staring at the masked man's figure with an admiring expression on her pretty face, looking like a little girl before her idol. Yuan no longer bothered with her, and also took a seat. What am I supposed to do? I don't sense anything from him. He wondered to himself as he stared at the masked man, pondering about the trial. The masked man had no aura. His breathing was so subtle that it was almost non-existent, almost as though he was on the verge of death. Many minutes later, still having no idea about the trial, Yuan turned to his companions for assistance. Do you guys know what is happening here? No idea. Feng Yuxiang responded without hesitation. I also don't know. Lan Yingying shook her head inwardly. Xiaohua's response took a little longer. Although he seems to be cultivating, the spiritual energy around him is completely still, so that's not possible. Perhaps he is training sword aura? Xiaohua can't tell because she cannot sense it. That's what I thought at first as well, but I cannot sense an ounce of sword aura from his body. Yuan shook his head. He began walking in circles around the masked man as he pondered more about the Sword Temple's purpose. However, no matter how much he racked his brains, he was unable to grasp the situation. Eventually, Jin Xi snapped, "Stop pacing around Master like he's some kind of object at an exhibit. Show some respect. You're also disturbing me by blocking my view." Yuan shrugged. What can I do? He's literally left no clue about this trial, and I cannot figure it out. Jin Xi facebombed inside. Why did the master even show himself to an idiot like you? That's quite harsh. But can you really blame me here? This trial is different for everyone, so it's not like I can prepare for this. After sighing again, Jin Xi spoke. Listen up, I will only say this once. What you're doing right now is pointless. You'll never get anywhere even in a million years at your current pace. If you want to understand the situation, stop looking at the surface and start looking deeper. Stop looking at the surface and look deeper. Yuan repeated in a mumbling voice. He turned to look at the masked man again. His breathing, the sound of his heartbeat. Yuan suddenly entered a trance where he was completely focused on the masked man, paying attention to the pace of his breathing and even the rhythm of his heartbeats. However, Yuan felt that wasn't enough, but he didn't know how to look deeper. Then, almost as though an invisible lightning bolt had struck him and gave him divine epiphany, Yuan subconsciously started using divine sense in a new way. Normally, one expands their divine sense outwards to see as much and as far as possible, but Yuan did the opposite and condensed his divine sense until it only had the masked man in its sight, allowing him to see the masked man like he was looking through a microscope. Unfortunately, he was only still able to see the exterior. Immediately, Yuan tried something different. This time, he condensed his divine sense even more, and he used it to enhance his own eyes. Yuan's eyes quickly widened with surprise. I can see everything. From his muscles to the bones. I can even count his blood cells individually. Divine gaze, rank, divine description, allows you to see the world in its purest form. Divine gaze. What a powerful technique. Yuan mumbled out loud. Jin Xi raised her eyebrows and spoke. Huh? You just learned how to use divine gaze? That's right. He nodded. How surprising. Given your talents, I thought you already learned it. Guess I overestimated you a little. Anyways, don't get too happy just yet. Learning divine gaze isn't the true purpose of this trial. It isn't. Yuan looked at her with wide eyes. And since he still had divine gaze activated, he accidentally glimpsed at Jin's eyes' bountiful body for a brief second before it stopped working before he could even deactivate it. Che. Jin Xi sucked her teeth in a disdainful manner. The first thing you do after learning divine gaze is to peek at a maiden's body? You're the worst. I didn't do that on purpose. Yuan quickly apologized to her. Then he asked, by the way, did you block my divine gaze? I cannot see through you even though it's still activated. Just like how you can use your divine sense to block others' divine sense if you have superior soul strength, you can block others' divine gaze with divine sense. After all, divine gaze is essentially divine sense, and they both require soul strength. The only reason you can use divine gaze on Master is because of the nature of this trial. So don't think for a second it'll work on everyone, especially those stronger than you. Jin Xi lectured him. I see. Anyways, you're still in the middle of the trial. Don't disturb me again until you're done. After saying that, Jin Xi returned to staring at the masked man. Now that he learned divine gaze, Yuan realized that she'd been using it on the masked man this entire time. This realization sent shivers down his entire body since she was technically looking at him, but he decided to ignore it and return to focusing on the trial. Chapter 1152. Published at 19th of March, 2023, 6:09 and 6 seconds AM. Chapter 1152. 1152. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1152. Sword body. After turning away from Jin Xi, Yuan returned to focusing on the masked man with divine gaze. Very quickly he realized something. His muscles and bones are enveloped in sword aura. Yuan cried inwardly after realizing this. However, that was just the beginning. No. Even his blood cells are enveloped in sword aura. How is that possible? He exclaimed out loud, his eyes filled with interest. Did Brother Yuan just say his blood is enveloped by sword aura? Xiao Hua's voice resounded a second later. Yes. It seems like everything inside his body, from his muscles to his blood cells, are covered in sword aura. Yuan confirmed. Do you know what is going on, Xiao Hua? He then asked. He has achieved what is known as a sword body. This is only possible when one unifies the very essence of sword aura with their own body. Only those with extreme understanding of sword aura and talent could achieve a sword body. Since ancient times, there has never been more than 10 sword masters that have achieved a sword body at any given time within the entire 9 heavens, and less than 100 sword masters have ever achieved this state. Xiao Hua explained to him. Is that so? A sword body, huh? Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice. Then he realized something. Wait, does this mean that he's telling me to achieve a sword body right now? How am I even supposed to do that? If he's your incarnation, you should be able to achieve it, young master. Feng Yuxiang said. How long does it usually take for one to achieve a sword body? Assuming they have what it takes to even achieve it. Lin Yingying asked out of curiosity. Hard to say. But nobody would be surprised even if it took those with a sword body over 10,000 years to achieve it. That's just how extremely rare they are. Over 10,000 years? Yuan swallowed nervously upon hearing this. Even if he was a genius, this trial will probably take him a long time to complete. Hopefully, he'll finish it before the tomb closes. Xiaohua, do you know the process of attaining a sword body? He asked her the most important question. Sorry, Brother Yuan, but there is very little information about sword bodies in general. Unless you learn from those with a sword body, nobody can really say for sure what it takes to achieve it. No worries. I guess I'll start by unifying my sword aura with my body. At least try to. And without saying anything, Yuan took a seat in front of the masked man and began inspecting his body again with divine gaze. However, even after staring for many minutes, Yuan still didn't know where to start. How do I even unify my sword aura with my body? Which part of my body do I start from? Eventually, Yuan just started by releasing his sword aura, enveloping his entire body with it. The sword aura would gush outwards, even creating ripples, but no matter what he tried, Yuan couldn't get it to go inside his body. Minutes turned into hours, and hours quickly turned into days. Within a blink of an eye, 6 days have passed since Yuan entered the Sword Temple. What's going on inside? It's almost been a week since he went inside. Most people come out after a day or two. I hope nothing happened to him. Tian Yinyu sighed in a worried tone while her eyes were glued to the Sword Temple, unwilling to look away until she saw Yuan's handsome face come out. Have you not been watching him for the last few trials? You should know by now that he's not the type to die easily. Save your worry for something that's actually worth worrying about. Her mother shook her head. Despite sounding cold, she also showed her confidence in Yuan with such words. I know, but I cannot help but worry. You sound like his mother. Heck, since when were you the type to worry so much about others? Are you really my daughter? Where did my selfish and cheeky little brat go? Her mother looked at her with suspicious eyes. What are you talking about? Do you have any idea how much he's helped our family? The least I can do is worry about him. Helping our family? Everything he's done up to this point was mostly for you. I'm actually shocked that he hasn't outright proposed to you yet. Tian Yanya's face immediately flushed with redness. If they looked at it from that point of view, Yuan's action would make more sense to them. But to be fair, there's no way anybody would have guessed Yuan's true reason for helping them. In fact, even if Yuan told them, they wouldn't have believed him. A full week eventually passed. He wants to achieve a sword body before the tomb closes in less than half a year? Not even the master could do such a thing, much less this greenhorn. Master was considered as the #1 genius in the 9 heavens during his era, and it still took him a little over 100 years to achieve his sword body. Jin Xi sneered inwardly at Yuan's ambition and ignorance. Shortly afterward, Jin's eyes gradually widened as she watched the masked man suddenly open his eyes and stand up, before walking behind Yuan and sitting down again. What is Master doing all of a sudden? She wondered inwardly. Yuan wasn't aware of the masked man's movements, as he was too absorbed in his own thoughts, almost as though he was in trance. Meanwhile, after taking a seat, the masked man lifted both of his arms and gently placed his palms behind Yuan's back, looking as though he was trying to help Yuan cultivate. It can't be. Don't tell me he's trying to. Jin Xi almost couldn't believe her eyes. Moments after the masked man's action, Yuan's sword aura that was gushing outward gradually began to weaken. However, if one had divine gaze, they would be able to tell that the sword aura was actually permeating into Yuan's body. Master's guiding him. But why? Jin Xi exclaimed inwardly, her jaw dropped. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1153. Published at 23rd of March, 2023, 6:57 and 9 seconds AM. Chapter 1153. 1153. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1153. Sword Body 2. What's happening? It suddenly feels like I know how to unite sword aura with my body. Yuan was surprised when his sword aura began entering his body. It also felt like he was being guided by someone, but he still wasn't aware of the masked man helping him. However, he didn't think too much about it, and continued to follow the guidance, slowly combining his sword aura with his body. Time passed quickly, and within the blink of an eye, half a month has passed since Yuan entered the sword temple. He's still inside, huh? It's been too long. Did something happen to him inside? Longchen pondered. He came out of the sword temple 3 days after Yuan entered the place, and has been waiting for him to come out since then. As far as I am aware, the sword temple isn't a dangerous place and nobody has died inside before, so what is he doing inside? He wasn't too worried about it, especially when he recalled how long Yuan took in the sword pagoda. Eventually, another half of a month passed with Yuan nowhere to be seen. It has been an entire month now since he entered the sword temple. During this time, rumors about Yuan dying inside the sword temple have spread throughout the Endless Emperor's tomb. This greatly shocked everyone, mostly because they all believed that the sword temple was a safe zone where one couldn't die. Many were also filled with pity knowing that a peerless genius had passed away in such an unfortunate manner. I don't believe it. There's no way Xiaoyang died inside. He is still alive. He must be. Tian Yinyu refused to believe the rumors. No matter what you believe, it won't change the fact that he's been inside for a month now. We have less than 4 months left before the tomb closes. If we stop wasting our time and leave now, we can still regroup with the others. I refuse. I will not move from this spot until Xiaoyang comes back out. Tian Yinyu exclaimed with a stubborn face. Her mother could only silently shake her head. Meanwhile, inside the sword temple, Yuan was still being guided by the masked man. After a month of constant assistance, his sword aura is almost fully unified with his body. Even someone as tremendously talented as Yuan required the help of his incarnation, and a month to reach this point, proving how ridiculously difficult it was to acquire a sword body. However, in the eyes of Jin Xi, his progress was still unbelievably fast. Even with Master's help, he's managed to reach this point in such a short amount of time. This kind of talent is unheard of. Several more hours later, the masked man finally lowered his arms and stood up. Is it done? Did he achieve a sword body? Jin Xi used her divine gaze to look at Yuan's physique. This bastard. He really did it. He really achieved a sword body at that age. Jin Xi muttered in a shaky voice, her body trembling as well. At this moment, Yuan's sword aura could not be sensed, almost as though it did not exist. However, if one were to look inside his body, they would see that all of his internal organs and muscles are being protected by sword aura. Yuan was pleasantly surprised by the bonuses he gained from having a sword body. Being immune to sword aura and other weapon auras could even be considered overpowered. You better thank the master for his assistance. If it weren't for him guiding you, you would have never achieved a sword body. Jin Xi suddenly said. So that feeling was because of you, huh? Thanks. The masked man then said. Take out your sword. Yuan nodded and retrieved his Empyrean Overlord. When he held onto the sword, it felt like the sword had melded into his hand, almost as if it had become his arm. Now attack me with everything you've got, he continued. Sure thing. Yuan said without any hesitation since he wasn't worried about killing the masked man. After taking a deep breath, Yuan swung the sword at the masked man without using any sword techniques. However, the force coming from the strike was immense and wouldn't lose to when he used an ancient rank sword technique before acquiring a sword body. This greatly surprised Yuan, who did not expect such prowess coming from a normal sword slash. Despite that, the masked man managed to catch his sword, and had done it with 2 fingers. Yuan wasn't too surprised by this and asked, satisfied? For now, at your current level, you will be able to handle the inner areas without too many problems. Speaking of the inner area, that is where I plan on going next. The masked man nodded and turned to look at Jin Xi, who quickly straightened her body. Take her with you. She'll be your guide, but don't expect her to protect you from the dangers within. I know. Yuan smiled. And thank you, Jin Xi. It's a pleasure that I could be of use to you again, Master. She smiled brightly. However, Yuan could feel a sense of sorrow coming from the masked man, which made him curious about their relationship even more. Hey, what's your relationship with her? He had to ask. Come, if you really want to know, you can ask her. I already did, but she refused. The masked man merely shrugged in silence. Anyways, it's about time for you to leave. You have been here for a month already after all. What? A month? Yuan exclaimed in a shocked voice. He must have experienced another enlightenment since it doesn't feel that long for him. Then I will teleport you two out now. The masked man waved his sleeve, sending them away. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1154 Entering the Inner Areas. Chapter 1154 Entering the Inner Areas. After being teleported out of the Sword Temple, Yuan found himself standing at the entrance of the building. I hope I didn't inconvenience the Tian family too much by being gone for so long without any explanation. Yuan quickly rushed outside as he activated his divine sense, hoping to find Tian Yinyu and her mother. Sure enough, he found them standing not too far away from the Sword Temple. He immediately rushed over after seeing them. Xiaoyang. Tian Yinyu was the first to notice him since she had been staring at the Sword Temple this entire time. You're alive. I knew it. She was clearly overjoyed to see him again. I am really sorry. I had an enlightenment in the Sword Temple and lost track of time. He immediately lowered his head and apologized to them. You had an enlightenment? Tian Suyin's eyes widened upon hearing that. No wonder why it took you so long to come back out. And congratulations on your enlightenment. Even the elders at my sect have never experienced one. You're too amazing, Xiaoyang. Tian Yanya's eyes shone with excitement. Tian Suyin's eyebrows twitched at such words, as she was also a sect elder. Sorry for not being part of the 1% that experienced enlightenment, and sorry for not being amazing. The irritation in her voice was obvious. Sorry. I didn't mean to mock you. Tian Yinyu quickly realized her mistake and apologized. If they knew that this wasn't Yuan's first or even second enlightenment, who knows how they would react. Sometime later, Yuan spoke with a guilty look on his face. I really hope you guys haven't been waiting for me this entire time. I told her we should just regroup with the others after waiting for 2 weeks, but this stubborn girl kept refusing, so yes, we have been waiting here for an entire month. Tian Suyin said. Tian Yanya's face flushed with redness as she silently nodded. Yuan felt incredibly guilty for making these two ladies wait an entire month for him, so he decided to postpone entering the inner area to help them a little more. I was going to enter the inner areas after this, but I will hold that off for a little longer. Do you guys have any specific places that you wish to visit? I will take you there as an apology, he said to them. PNDD? 1 ko. You really don't have. I do. Tian Suyin interrupted. Yuan smiled at her. Where would you like to go? I have always been interested in this place, but due to it being at the edge of the inner area, I never really had the courage to go. However, now that we have a monster like you with us, I think it's possible. And she continued. It's a place called Sword Graveyard, where thousands of powerful swords are rooted into the ground. Rumors are that each sword has a powerful sword technique hidden within, meaning that there could be potentially thousands of sword techniques to be learned there. Oh, I read about that place. I wanted to go there, as well. Yuan said. Then it's settled. Let's go there now. Though I don't really know how to get there since it's not near this area. Tian Suyin said. Yuan turned to look at Jin Xi and asked her. Do you mind showing us the way? You're a guide, so you should be able to do that at the very least, right? Yes, I don't mind showing you the way to the sword graveyard. She nodded with a nonchalant face. Wait, she's coming with us as well. Isn't she a spirit from the trial? Is that even allowed? Tian Yinyu asked. Yuan nodded. She's a special case. It'll be even more reassuring if she's coming with us. Tian Suyin smiled. Oh, She won't protect us even if we are in danger. She's just a guide. Yuan quickly said. He didn't want them to have the wrong idea later on when she refuses to protect them. Is that so? What a pity. Anyways, it shouldn't be too dangerous since it's going to be on the edge of the inner area. They left the Sword Temple shortly after. You know, there's a rumor going around claiming that you have died inside the Sword Temple. Tianyanyu said to Yuan as they traveled. I'm not surprised. Yuan chuckled. A week of traveling later, they arrived at the border of the Nameless Emperor's tomb's inner area. This should be obvious, but the inner area is nothing like the outer area. It's much more dangerous with many more magic beasts and other entities roaming around. The trials will also be more brutal. Less than 1% of people who enter the inner area make it back out alive. Jin Xi warned them. Other entities, huh? Yuan mumbled. By entities, she's probably talking about demons. Tian Suyin said. Oh right, I read about this before, but I didn't care about it since I never imagined entering the inner areas. Tianyanyu sighed. Unfortunately, they are not something even you can handle, Xiaoyang. We must run if we encounter one. Tian Suyin said to him, unaware of his demon-slaying expertise. Ho! They must be really strong then. I can't wait to fight one. I like a good challenge, after all. Yuan decided to play dumb and act like he's never encountered a demon before. Are you even listening to me? Unless you know demon sealing techniques, it's nigh impossible to kill them because of their immortality. I do not want to repeat myself again. We must run if we encounter one. Tian Suyin spoke with a frown on her face. If it's Xiaoyang, maybe he can kill them. Tian Yinyu said, showing her absolute trust in his abilities. Tian Suyin facebombed at her daughter's blind trust in Yuan. Whatever. If you really want to fight it, I won't stop you, but I will also not stay to fight it with you. I am not reckless after all. Of course. Yuan nodded with a smile. C1155 What just happened? Chapter 1155 What just happened? Yuan and the others stepped into the inner area of the tomb after mentally preparing themselves. The second their feet touched the ground in the inner area, they felt the atmosphere instantly change, and it suddenly felt as though they'd entered another world. A world that is filled with death and a place that humans don't belong. This is worse than I thought. Tian Suyin muttered as she subconsciously pinched her nose to avoid the smell. What the? Where did this stench come from? It wasn't there just a second ago. Tian Yinyu was baffled. You cannot see it, but the inner area and the outer area are separated by an invisible boundary. In fact, they can be considered as their own world. Jin Xi said. No wonder. Tian Yinyu mumbled. You guys should block the smell with your spiritual energy. Yuan said to them. Calm, no need to state the obvious. I was just surprised by how sudden it was. Tian Suyin said with a slightly rosy face as she stopped pinching her nose. They followed Jin Xi deeper into the area shortly after, entering a heavily forested area. Everything seemed normal for the first several minutes, but Yuan suddenly stopped walking and said, Careful, there's a demon coming our way. Huh? What nonsense are you talking about? I don't sense any, Jin Xi said, halting her sentence halfway through. No way. There's really a demon approaching us. How did you sense it before me? Jin Xi was pretty proud of her own sharp senses. Unfortunately for her, no matter how sharp her senses are, they would never defeat Yuan when it comes to sensing demons. In fact, Yuan could sense multiple demons in their area, with some of them being hundreds of miles away. What are you waiting for? Do you really plan on fighting a demon? I'm telling you, they are far more terrifying than whatever you're imaging right now. We need to leave right now. Tian Suyin exclaimed in a nervous manner when she noticed that Yuan didn't seem to have any intention of running. We'll be fine. Yuan reassured her, but his words didn't sound convincing at all. Forget it. Yinyu, we're leaving him behind. If he wants to die that badly, we'll grant his wish. She quickly gave up on trying to convince Yuan, and went to grab Tian Yanyu's hand. However, Tian Yinyu didn't budge despite her pulling. Yinyu? What do you think you are doing? Tian Suyin looked at her with wide eyes filled with disbelief. I'm going to stay here with Xiaoyang. Tian Yinyu responded in a low voice with a subtle smile. Have you really gone mad? It was at this moment that Tian Suyin realized that Tian Yinyu was no longer the daughter she knew, as she has drastically changed since meeting Yuan. You should calm down a bit, little girl. Jin Xi suddenly spoke, causing Tian Suyin to freeze. Little girl? Tian Suyin almost couldn't believe her ears. This was her first time being called a little girl by someone who looked to be in her early 20s. Although it may not seem like it, I am actually over 100,000 years old. At least before I died. Jin Xi smiled. Really? Even Yuan reacted with surprise when he learned of this information. Tian Suyin was only 300 years old herself. If one compared their age, they would understand why Tian Suyin would only be a little girl in Jin Zai's eyes. Anyways, if you want to leave, you can leave. Though I think your worries are unnecessary. Jin Xi then said. However, before Tian Suyin could say anything else, a terrorizing pressure appeared in their area, causing her body to freeze from fear. And from the edge of her eyes, Tian Suyin could see a red figure walking towards their direction. It's over. She cried inwardly. That's a demon? Mother was right. It's reckless to even attempt fighting them. Tian Yinyu fell on her buttocks after sensing the astronomical amount of killing intent being emitted by the demon. Just its gaze alone snapped Tian Yinyu back to being clear-headed. You think you can kill it? It's too late to run now. Jin Xi looked at Yuan with a cheeky smile on her face. If you beg me to help you, I just might disturb the demon for a moment, she continued. Yuan chuckled. Thanks but no thanks. He summoned his Empyrean overlord and began walking towards the demon in a slow and relaxed manner. This made Yuan recall his first encounter with a demon, but he was not as naive and weak as he was back then. Foolish human. The demon uttered in a mocking tone after seeing that Yuan was approaching it instead of running away. PNDD? 1 Ko. I'm a lowly demon. I don't even have to use my demon sealing aura to deal with you. Like the lowly demon it was, it immediately lost control of its temper and forcefully rushed at Yuan. Seeing this, Yuan pointed his sword at the incoming demon. The demon suddenly vanished into thin air the very next second. This befuddled Tian Suyin and Tian Yinyu, who had no idea what had just happened. What just happened? Tian Suyin asked in a dazed voice. He killed it. Jin Xi answered after a brief moment of silence. What? Both Tian Suyin and Tian Yinyu exclaimed. Jin Xi then explained. He surrounded the demon with enhanced sword aura just now, shredding its body into pieces so small that it can't be seen with just one's bare eyes. But he didn't stop there, and continued to cut the demon until its last cell was destroyed. After all, a demon can fully regenerate from even a single blood cell. Tian Suyin swallowed nervously after hearing Jin Zai's explanation, but she doubted if something like that was even possible. Is something like that really possible? Tian Yinyu asked what was on her mother's mind. Can it be done? Of course, since it just happened right before your eyes. However, it requires one to have perfect control over their own sword aura and a tremendous amount of sword aura. And missing either one will make it impossible. Something 99% of sword masters cannot replicate. Jin Xi said. C1156 Sword Graveyard. Chapter 1156 Sword Graveyard. So that was a demon, huh? They're not as strong as I thought. Yuan said, still putting up the act that this was his first encounter with a demon. However, Tian Suyin immediately saw through his act and pointed at him and shouted, Why you think this is funny? There's no way that was your first fight with a demon since you clearly knew about its regeneration abilities, or else you wouldn't have done something so ridiculous as your first move. Yuan smiled at her remarks and asked, Even if I told you that I have the ability to kill them, would you have believed me? Tian Suyin immediately became speechless, as there was no way that she'd have believed him. You're really full of surprises, Xiaoyang. Tian Yinyu said with a dazed face. Not only have you encountered them, you seem very experienced with fighting them. Where'd you learn that, HM? Jin Xi looked at him with an intrigued gaze. I will tell you if you tell me your relationship with the masked man. Yuan smiled at her. Why? Why do you care so much about my relationship with another man? Are you jealous? She laughed. Tianyin stared at Yuan intensively. Yuan shrugged. Will you tell me if I admit that I am jealous? No, she immediately replied. Yuan merely shook his head in silence before speaking. Anyways, let's continue. They started moving again shortly after. Xiaoyang, are you really jealous? Tianyin asked him using divine sense. No way. Then why do you care so much? To tell you the truth, I have some connections to the masked man, so I was just interested. What? Tianyin exclaimed in a shocked voice after hearing this. Why are you suddenly shouting? Tian Suyin frowned. Sorry. Jin Xi glanced at them. She contemplated listening in on their conversation, but knowing Yuan's ability, had easily realized it. Keep it a secret, okay? Yuan chuckled. Of course. But how do you know the masked man? Isn't he the creator of this place? I don't actually know him. Sorry, I don't know how to explain it. It's complicated. After all, it wasn't as if he could say that he was the masked man's reincarnation. Is that so? Despite her curiosity, Tianyin didn't pursue the topic any longer. After walking for a little longer, Tianyin suddenly asked, Hey, I just noticed this, but why are we walking? Wouldn't it be faster if we flew there? If you wish to be spotted easily by demons and magical beasts, by all means, I don't mind flying. Jin Xi said. This quickly made Tianyin speechless. Actually, never mind. I was being too short-sighted, she apologized in an embarrassed manner. Wait a second. Yuan suddenly jumped in, and he continued. That's actually not a bad idea. Time is precious in this place, after all. Don't worry, I will deal with any danger that we encounter. Normally, this is where Tian Suyin objects and starts calling him reckless. However, after what she witnessed before, she realized that Yuan was not the reckless type, and that he had the power to back up his confidence. Since nobody is objecting, let's start flying now. Jin Xi said as she ascended into the sky. Literally not even 5 minutes later, Yuan could sense demons approaching them. Calm, be careful, we have 3 guests. Yuan calmly warned them. 3. Tian Suyin exclaimed. Don't worry, they are all low-ranking demons. I can deal with them with closed eyes. This guy. Tian Suyin was speechless. Who? An excited voice suddenly resounded from a distance. It's been over 100 years since I last tasted humans. Lucky me. The 3 demons laughed merrily as they surrounded Yuan's group. Tian Suyin and Tianyin subconsciously moved closer to Yuan when they felt the demons scanning their bodies with starved eyes. Let's feast. One of the demons suddenly rushed forward. Yuan raised his arm and pointed at the incoming demon before unleashing his sword aura. Almost instantly, the demon's body was shredded until there was nothing left. This shocked the other 2 demons, who had no idea what had just happened. And while they were scrambling to make sense of the situation, Yuan unleashed his sword aura for a second time, killing another demon. The remaining demon trembled, and with hesitation, it turned around and began flying away at maximum speed. Where do you think you are going? Yuan sent his sword aura chasing after the fleeing demon. The demon could feel the lower part of its body quickly being consumed by the sword aura, but it could not run any faster. In the end, its life also perished to the sword aura. C1140 After dealing with the 3 demons as though it was nothing but a walk in the park, Yuan sighed in a disappointed voice. It's a pity that I can only target one of them at a time right now. Tian Suyin looked at him with a baffled face. Is there anything that he can't do? She wondered inwardly. Let's continue, shall we? Yuan smiled at them, acting like nothing had just happened. Eventually, they arrived at the sword graveyard. It took them nearly half a month, and they had encountered over 100 demons on their way there. One of you here must be a demon magnet, Jin Xi said, because of their abnormal number of encounters with demons. Yuan could only show a stiff smile regarding her remarks. So this is the sword graveyard, huh? It exceeds my imagination. Tian Suyin mumbled. her face full of delight, almost like a child at an amusement park for their first time. Before her was a large field with thousands of unique swords plunged into the ground, invoking a sense of both awe and sadness. The sheer number of swords was overwhelming, and it made Tian Suin wonder why this place existed. Had these swords been discarded? Is this truly a burial ground for swords? Or is there a deeper meaning for this place? All these swords. What a waste! Tian Suin sighed. As someone who walked the path of a sword master, this sword graveyard was a sorrowful sight. When Yuan first laid eyes on the sword graveyard, his body froze, and for some inexplicable reason he started feeling many emotions that he could not explain. Chapter 1157. Published at 27th of March, 2023, 3:35 and 22 seconds p.m. Chapter 1157. Chapter 1157 Sword Graveyard 2. If audio player doesn't work, press stop then play button again. Chapter 1157 Sword Graveyard 2. X Xiaoyang? Are you okay? Tian Yinyu asked him when she noticed that he had tears in the corner of his eyes. However, almost as though he couldn't hear her, Yuan remained silent as he stared at the graveyard. Perhaps had recognized these swords. Even though he himself might not remember them, his soul remembers the time they had spent together. In his days, Yuan started to approach the sword graveyard, and it even looked like he wanted to reach for one of the swords there. When Tian Suin saw this, she immediately sprang into action and grabbed him by the collar before yanking him back. Whoa! This snapped Yuan out of his daze. Are you crazy? Tian Suin shouted at him afterward. You cannot touch these swords. Anyone that does so will face severe punishment. Really? Yuan expressed genuine surprise, as he didn't know about this. Many people have tried to take a sword from this place, but all of them have perished after being punished. Even immortals have died in this place, so no matter how talented you are, even you won't survive. Tian Suin explained. And she continued, the only thing we are allowed to do here is study these swords and hopefully learn something from it. Is that so? Sorry and thank you for waking me up. I don't know what just happened to me. Yuan said. Are you okay? Tian Yinyu asked him again. Huh? What do you mean? Yuan asked with a puzzled face, still unaware that he had been crying just now. Tian Yinyu pointed at his eyes and said in a low voice, You're crying. What? Yuan quickly wiped his eyes and sure enough, it was wet. Why did I? He muttered in a dazed voice. Jin Xi silently stared at Yuan with narrowed eyes, seeming in deep thoughts. Piffy, that idiot really tried to take a sword from this place. Why did she have to stop him? It would have been a spectacular sight to see him get punished. Yuan suddenly heard voices that he was unfamiliar with, and they were laughing at him. He looked around, and it was at this moment that he realized they were not alone. Pan Di? 1. COM There were over 100 other people there at glance, which surprised him. I thought not many people dare to venture into the inner areas? He asked Tian Suin. Since this is just the border and the least dangerous area, many people risk their lives to come here, especially since the techniques they can learn in this place are at least divine rank. Is that so? Yuan didn't mind the mockery and acted as though they weren't even there. Anyways, now that we have arrived, I am going to study the swords. Yinyu, since this is a rare occasion, you should also try to learn something. We might not get another chance to come back here after all, Tian Suin said to her daughter. Okay. She nodded before turning to look at Yuan. What are you going to do? Since I am here, I might as well look around too. He said. All right. Oh, how long do we plan on staying here? Yuan suddenly asked. Since you wasted a month of our time, it's only fair if we stay here for a month. However, I guess 2 weeks will do. Tian Suin said, as she didn't want to take away too much of Yuan's time, despite her words. I understand. Then we will leave in 2 weeks. With that settled, Tian Suin and Tian Yinyu immediately began wandering the sword graveyard. Like tombs in a graveyard, each sword had enough space between each other to allow people to surround it, so nobody there had to worry about fighting for spots. With that being said, some swords are especially popular and do become overcrowded at times. Oh lucky me. There's a spot left for the Silver Moon Soul Blade. Tian Suyin was filled with joy when she noticed an empty spot at one of the most popular swords in the sword graveyard. The Silver Moon Soul Blade is a mythic grade sword. A treasure that normally wouldn't exist in the third heaven except for the Nameless Emperor's tomb, so its popularity was only natural. There were a total of 3 mystic grade swords in the sword graveyard, and they are usually packed to the brim with people, hence Tian Suyin's excitement. Meanwhile, Tian Yinyu settled with a random ancient grade sword that caught her eyes the moment she looked at it, almost as though she had a connection with it. Radiant Scarlet Blade. Tian Yinyu read the engraving on the sword's crimson blade. As for Yuan, he merely stood at the entrance of the sword graveyard. There were so many swords that he didn't know where to start. Eventually, he picked a random sword and sat before it. You guys can look around if you want, Yuan said to Xiaohua and the others. I don't use the sword, so I am fine staying here, Lan Yingying said. Me too, Feng Yuxiang said. Xiaohua will stay with you, Xiaohua said. Yuan didn't say anything else and returned to focusing on the sword before him. Let's see what kind of technique you'll teach me. Yuan smiled inwardly. He started by using Divine Gaze on the sword, but nothing special happened, so he just started studying it normally. He would eventually enter a trance when images began appearing inside his mind. However, these images would not just teach him sword techniques. In addition to sword techniques, they were memories, his memories with this particular sword. The moment of their meeting, their journeys together, all of the enemies they have slain together. These memories lasted all the way till the end of their journey. Yuan was surprised at first, but he quickly calmed down and started to absorb these memories like a dry sponge with water. Since he had grown accustomed to being fed memories, he found the process to be quite pleasing, as it was like watching a movie of himself. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. C1148 Memories within the Sword Graveyard. Chapter 1158 Memories within the Sword Graveyard. 10 hours. Yuan had spent 10 hours in real time recalling his memories with the sword, but inside his mind, dozens of years have passed. Had fought thousands of enemies, traveled tens of thousands of miles, and eventually had to put the sword to rest when it had become too damaged to use. When Yuan snapped back into reality, he remained sitting there with a dazed look on his face, and tears were flowing down his cheeks. I remember now. I remember our time together. Starfall Saber. When Yuan uttered this familiar name, the sword before him suddenly began to tremble, almost as though it was responding to his call. However, it calmed down a few seconds later. In the end, this sword graveyard and all of the swords within was nothing more than an illusion, something the masked man had created from his memories. Despite that, the memories shown to Yuan by the sword were definitely very real. Are you okay, brother Yuan? Xiaohua asked him. Yes, I am fine. We might actually stay here a little longer than expected, he said, as Head decided to retrieve all of his memories from the swords in this place. Sometime later, Yuan walked to the next sword. Since he was going to study all of them, he might as well start from the very first sword towards the entrance of the graveyard. Once he sat down before the sword that read Blood Moon Blade, Yuan would stare at the sword until his eyes slowly closed and images began appearing inside his head. Over the next week, Yuan would spend anywhere between 4 hours to an entire day with each sword. Thousands of years of experience and hundreds of unique sword techniques flooded Yuan's mind. Even though he was just recalling his memories with the swords, his sword mastery would increase drastically without needing to lift a sword. At the end of the second week, Yuan looked at how many swords were left in the sword graveyard inside. At this rate, it will take me years to go through every single sword here. As Yuan pondered about what he should do in this situation, he suddenly heard a commotion not far away. Get out of my spot, you bitch. Pa? Dien? Si? Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Since when did this become your spot? Yuan raised an eyebrow upon hearing this familiar voice. He could see Tian Suyin arguing with another woman. Ko just now. A weak bitch like you should be grateful that you even got to study the Silver Moon Soul Blade for a minute. I will not ask you again. Move, or I will move you myself. You call me weak, yet you have a lower cultivation than me. How hilarious. Tian Suyin sneered in a cold manner. The other woman laughed out loud. You have no idea who you're messing with. Darling, come get this bitch out of my spot. The following moment, Tian Suyin felt the pressure of a peak spirit king bearing down on her. Then a figure descended from the sky and landed between them. This figure stood well over 7 feet tall and had a broad, muscular build with a thick neck, wide shoulders, and bulging arms and legs. His chest was as wide as a barrel, giving him an imposing appearance. However, this man's staggering presence did not seem to faze Tian Suyin at all. In fact, she looked unimpressed. Really? You're going to make your man bully another woman? How pathetic are you? Tian Suyin shook her head. Also, you're bothering the others. None of this would have happened if you were obedient. Now, we'll have to make a spectacle out of you. Anyways, it's too late even if you want to give up your seat now. Tian Suyin didn't say anything and started looking around the sword graveyard in silence. Are you going to act like a damsel in distress and ask for help? There's nobody here that can protect you. The woman laughed in an obnoxious manner. Meanwhile, when Tian Suyin noticed Yuan staring at them from a distance, a slight smile formed on her beautiful face. Even a damsel in distress has more dignity than someone like you. If you're going to do it, hurry up and do it, you pathetic little whore. Tian Suyin cursed back. The woman trembled in anger, and she pointed at Tian Suyin before roaring. Make her regret ever coming here, Wang Xian. The bulky man's eyes became filled with killing intent as he retrieved a massive axe from his spatial ring and swung it at Tian Suyin. The axe was also coated in a thin layer of axe aura, something similar to sword aura, but only available to those who mastered the axe. Tian Suyin's eyes widened slightly, but her vision was suddenly blocked by someone that had appeared in front of her like a ghost. This person was obviously Yuan, and he lifted his arm to casually catch the incoming strike. Whoosh! A gust of wind swept the sword graveyard the moment Yuan caught the axe with just his fingers. This shocked everybody there. As for the bulky man, he was in utter disbelief that someone had just caught his powerful attack with 2 mere fingers. You okay? Yuan ignored the others and turned to ask Tian Suyin, who nodded her head in a dazed manner. She knew that Yuan would protect her, but she didn't expect him to do it in such a fashion. Darling, what's wrong? Why did you stop? Just cleave through this fool who thinks he's a hero. The woman misunderstood the situation and thought that the bulky man had stopped his attack right before his axe reached Yuan. As the thought that someone as small as Yuan in comparison could block the man's attack was simply impossible. That is. The man didn't know how to respond, and he was still trying to comprehend the situation himself. C1159 Sword Graveyard's Fury. Chapter 1159 Sword Graveyard's Fury. When the bulky man eventually realized the reality of his situation, his clothes became soaked in cold sweat. PNDD? 1 Ko. I cannot even pull away my axe from his grasp. What is happening? How is he holding on to my axe that is coated with axe aura with his bare hands? Darling, what are you doing? Hurry up and kill them. His partner shouted again. Damn it. This dumb bitch has no idea the gravity of our situation. The man cursed inwardly. Yuan eventually released his grasp on the axe and lowered his hand. What should I do with them, Senior Tian? Yuan asked her for suggestions. I don't care as long as you get rid of these eyesores, she said. Yuan nodded and looked at the couple. Those who are prepared to take another's life should also be prepared to have theirs taken from them, right? Yuan asked them. Aarg. The bulky man that had been frozen for some time now suddenly roared like a wild beast. He lifted his axe and swung it again. Swift execution. The man's aura exploded, and the axe suddenly seemed 10 times larger as it flew closer to Yuan and Tian Suyin. Let's see if this sword body is truly untouchable by weapon auras. Yuan decided to just stand there without any thoughts of blocking the strike. This fool must be frozen with fear. The woman laughed out loud when she saw him standing there like a statue. Whoosh. The massive axe that was aimed directly at Yuan's neck eventually reached its destination. However, forget about severing his head, the axe couldn't even cut his skin. From the onlooker's eyes, the bulky man had, once again, stopped his axe right before it struck Yuan. I cannot cut him. When the bulky man realized that Yuan didn't stop his first attack by mistake, he felt all of the strength in his body disappearing from his body. This caused him to lose his grip on the axe, letting it fall into the ground. The bulky man then fell to his knees shortly after. Wang Xian, what the fuck are you doing? The woman began cursing at him. Forget it. It was a mistake to rely on you. I will take care of them myself. The woman decided to take matters into her own hand, and retrieved her weapon. Now with a sword in her grasp, the woman rushed forward while performing a sword technique. When the sword was close enough, Yuan closed his hand into a fist except for his middle finger. He then casually lifted his arm, blocking the woman's sword with his middle finger. What? The woman's eyes nearly popped out of its sockets when she felt an immovable force colliding with her sword. Her gaze glued to the single middle finger that was blocking her sword. After blocking the attack, Yuan coated his middle finger with his sword aura, and like knife-cutting tofu, his middle finger sliced through the heaven-grade treasure without any resistance. Thud. The woman looked at the sword with a broken blade in her grasp with a baffled expression on her face. The spectators present shared similar reactions. This show-off, Jin Xi muttered in a low voice after witnessing everything. After a moment of dead silence, the woman suddenly turned to look at the Silver Moon's soul blade beside them. Perhaps she had experienced such shock that her mind became roasted, but the woman was no longer thinking clearly. In one swift movement, she extended her arm and grabbed onto the hilt of the sword. When the cultivators around them saw this, their immediate reaction was to flee the area, and it wasn't just them. That crazy bitch touched the Silver Moon's soul blade. Run if you don't want to get caught up in her punishment. Every cultivator inside the sword graveyard quickly scrambled to get out of the graveyard. Huh. The woman snapped back to reality after hearing such words, and she immediately released the sword. The woman had barely touched the sword for a second, but it was already too late, as the sky above them quickly darkened. Seeing this, Yuan grabbed Tian Suyin and pulled her away as he distanced himself from the couple. The woman attempted to flee as well, but she remained still, as if bound by invisible shackles that rendered her utterly immobile, her very essence paralyzed by an unseen force beyond her comprehension. A profound and eerie silence blanketed the graveyard, broken only by the faint rustle of wind through the trees, until suddenly, as if stirred by an otherworldly force, the thousands of swords resting within the graveyard began to tremble, their ancient blades resonating with a palpable and ominous energy that reverberated through the very air itself. The swords stopped trembling after a few seconds before erupting from the ground and soaring into the heavens. Astonished gasps could be heard from those that were witnessing this for the first time. Help! Someone! Please! Help me! I will do anything! The woman began screaming her lungs out as her body was still frozen in time. Unsurprisingly, nobody there even dared to take a step towards the graveyard at this moment. A few seconds later, the swords hovering ominously in the air began to stir once more, their gleaming blades shifting in unison with an eerie grace, until they finally came to a stop with their sharp tips pointed at the terrified woman. Despite the horrifying scene, nobody there could tear their gaze away from the scene, almost as though they were all trapped in a powerful charm. In the end, they all watched as the swords descended upon the woman and the man, covering their figures. In that fleeting, heart-stopping moment, the very air itself seemed to come to a halt, suffocated by an all-encompassing dread that left a single soul present able to draw even the slightest breath. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the nightmare ended with the swords returning to their resting place, the graveyard once again peaceful. As for the couple, not a trace remained, as if they never existed in the first place. C1160 The Sword Graveyard Trembles Again. Chapter 1160 The Sword Graveyard Trembles Again. Senior, I'd like to thank you again for stopping me before. Yuan mumbled in a dumbfounded voice after the sword graveyard's fury ended. Tian Suyin was still in a state of shock, so she didn't hear him. I think that was our cue to leave. It's been 2 weeks anyway. Tian Yinyu said. Oh, about that. I would actually like to stay a little longer. Yuan then said. Really? How long? Tian Suyin immediately snapped out of her daze. Please visit. Calm as terrifying as what had happened was, it wasn't enough to deter her from the sword graveyard, as she has yet to gain anything from it. I can't say for sure. How about another 2 weeks for now? Yuan said after a moment of pondering. Tian Suyin and her daughter agreed. After their decision, they returned to the sword graveyard. The other cultivators also made their way back to their respective positions, but with a sense of unease grasping their heart. Their movements were stiff and careful, caused by a newfound hesitation, and a growing apprehension of the unfathomable power that lay hidden within the swords. Unsurprisingly, Tian Suyin returned to the Silver Moon Soulblade. The cultivators present with her purposefully distanced themselves from her, as they were also frightened of Yuan's presence. Tian Suyin didn't complain since this gave her more breathing room, allowing her to focus more easily on the sword. As for Tian Yinyu, she decided to try her luck on a new sword after 2 weeks of no progress from her previous sword, even going for a lower-grade sword. Yuan wanted to go back to studying the swords as well, but he has yet to resolve his problem regarding the lack of time in this place. What should I do? He continued to ponder, but to no avail. In the end, he decided to only study the swords that resonated with him the most. The first sword was a mere heaven-grade sword. Heavenly Ice Sword. Yuan mumbled its name as he sat before it. C. The sword emitted a chilling aura, and as it brushed past him, Yuan felt a sudden, inexplicable shiver race down his spine. Then his earliest memories with this sword began appearing inside his head. A woman stood before him. She was stunningly beautiful with a commanding presence that made her hard to ignore. She has sharp, angular features that gave her an almost sculpted appearance, and a cool, unapproachable demeanor that only adds to her allure. Her eyes were piercing and seemed to have the ability to see through even heaven itself, their light blue color perfectly complementing her pale, flawless complexion. Her lips are full and perfectly shaped, but one glance and anyone could tell that she rarely smiled. Despite her cool exterior, there was a sense of overwhelming strength to her gaze that suggested she was not someone to be trifled with. And in her grasp was the heavenly ice sword. Why are you here? The beauty asked him in a nonchalant voice. Your family is worried sick after your sudden disappearance, so they asked me to find you. Out of the millions of people they could have asked for help, they decided to ask for your help. I don't buy it. Yuan chuckled. If you don't believe me, you can go back to your family and ask them with me. The beauty suddenly unsheathed her sword and pointed its cold blade at him. Do you take me for a fool? I wouldn't dare. Humph. If you want me to go back, defeat me. Are you sure? I have always wanted to fight you, who is proclaimed as the #1 genius by many. If you say so. Yuan retrieved his sword the very next moment. I know this sword. It was also in the sword graveyard. He thought to himself as memories continued to flow inside his head. 3 hours later, Yuan slowly opened his eyes, muttering a name as he came to his senses, Bingjia. After wiping the tears from his eyes, Yuan stood up and scanned the sword graveyard until he found a certain sword. It was the sword he wielded when he clashed with the cold beauty. Red Dragon Fang. Yuan quickly submerged himself in its memories. In the blink of an eye, 3 weeks passed. Even though they were supposed to leave a week ago, Tian Suyin and Tian Yinyu decided to stay longer when they noticed how engrossed Yuan was with the swords, and they were afraid to disturb his trance. I wonder what kind of techniques he is learning from them. Tian Suyin's sigh carried a subtle hint of envy, a longing for something that seemed just out of her reach. I'm sure he'll tell us about it once he's done. Tian Yinyu smiled. They returned to their own studies shortly after. In the 3rd week, after staying at the sword graveyard for a little over a month, Yuan received a notification. Yuan was taken aback by this notification that felt different than usual. Yes, I do, he answered a moment later. The very next second, the swords within the sword graveyard began to tremble once again, shocking the cultivators there. It's going to punish someone again. The trembling intensified as the cultivators began scrambling out of the area, and the swords soon began to glow with an otherworldly light, their blades pulsing with an energy that seemed to defy explanation. It was as if the swords themselves were alive, reacting to some unknown force that only they could sense. Within seconds, all of the cultivators exited the sword graveyard. All but a single young man who stood at the center of the place with a nonchalant expression on his face. Xiaoyang. Tian Yinyu cried out loud at the sight of his lone figure in the graveyard, her heart beating so hard it was on the verge of bursting through her chest. C1161 Return the Swords or Die. Chapter 1161 Return the Swords or Die. When Tian Suyin noticed that her daughter was about to rush back into the sword graveyard, she quickly restricted her movements with a bear hug. Stop. Do you want to die? I don't care. He's not going to die, I think, Tian Suyin suddenly exclaimed, which calmed Tian Yinyu down a little. Look at it, feel the atmosphere. Despite the similarities, this is nothing like when that couple got punished, and as crazy as this may sound, I can feel a sense of attachment from the swords. As the spectators awaited yet another grand display of execution, the blades buried within the sword graveyard awakened from their slumber once again, ascending to the heavens in a breathtaking dance. Once every sword ascended to the sky, they began to move in perfect harmony, their razor-sharp tips converging towards Yuan, who stood firmly and unhinged despite the terrifying scene happening above him. However, the ladies inside Yuan did not share the same feeling. In fact, they were terrified for him. Young master, I think this is a little too dangerous even for you. Brother Yuan, don't worry, they won't hurt me. I can feel it. Yuan said to them with an air of tranquility enveloping his words, trying to calm their souls with his overwhelming confidence. Come. He suddenly roared. The sword suspended in the sky immediately stirred with a mighty force and hurled towards Yuan like a celestial barrage of fiery meteors. However, when the first sword reached Yuan and pierced his body, it did not go through his body and come out the other end like it was supposed to and actually disappeared into his body. The second sword and the swords after that also did the same thing, and it was as though they were being absorbed by him. This continued until there was not a single sword left. Everything happened so fast that the onlookers were still trying to figure out what they had just witnessed even many minutes later. After the swords entered his body, Yuan quickly realized that he could retrieve their memories at will. Does this mean I no longer need to stay here to recall their memories one by one? This is great. Yuan was filled with excitement knowing that he could take his time absorbing these memories. Sometime later, the cultivators outside the sword graveyard made their way back into the area, and they all had deep frowns on their faces. Hey, what did you do with the swords? Why are they not returning? One of them pointed at Yuan and questioned him about the swords, as they have yet to return. Without any swords, the sword graveyard could no longer bear such a name. In fact, it wouldn't even qualify as an ordinary graveyard, as there were only holes in the ground which had been left behind by the swords. No idea. Yuan answered with a calm shrug. Are you fucking with me? Bring back the swords. Yeah. Or we will tear your body open and take them back by force. The cultivators began threatening Yuan with force. Although none of them were confident of defeating Yuan alone, they felt invincible together. There were a little over 200 cultivators present. They believed that if they all attacked at once, not even he would leave unscathed. I really don't know what happened to the swords, nor can I take them out since I don't have them. Yuan sighed. Bullshit. Everyone here watched you absorb the swords into your body. I know that's what it looked like, but fuck it. This bastard is clearly not going to comply. Let's get him. Before Yuan could even finish his sentence, the cultivators encircled him, exuding an aura of animosity, their eyes fixed upon him with killing intent. I really don't want to hurt anyone here over something nobody here could control. Let's try to settle this peacefully, alright? Yuan felt a little guilty for hogging all of the swords for himself and inconveniencing these people, even if he had a good reason for doing so. If you want this to end peacefully, you will return those swords. Someone shouted. Yeah, that's right. Return the swords. They belong to nobody but the nameless emperor's tomb, much less a nobody like you. In the midst of the chaos, Yuan had a sudden idea flash inside his head. How about this? I will give everyone here a chance to learn a sword technique of their choosing. These sword techniques will come from the swords that had existed within the sword graveyard. What kind of nonsense is that? Do you think we are idiots? Let me explain. Yuan quickly said. When the swords entered my body, I learned all of their sword techniques, and I am willing to show them to you. Even if I return the swords, what are the chances of you actually learning its technique? Yuan spoke to these cultivators with logic and reasoning. EVL. Oh, why you learned all of the sword techniques? The cultivators were shocked, but they did not immediately believe Yuan's words either, as it sounded too good to be true. That's impossible. He's definitely lying to us to save his own life. Right. I'm willing to bet my life that he doesn't know shit. The cultivators quickly became hostile again. What should we do? Tianyanyu asked her mother as they watched from a distance. Nothing. He can handle it himself. Tian Suyin said with an unwavering expression on her face. Seeing that nobody would believe him, Yuan decided to approach the situation from another direction. But he still wasn't planning on taking any lives. He spread his arms wide open and gestured for them in a provoking manner. All right. You know what? If you think you can kill me, go ahead. I won't fight back for the first 10 minutes. But after 10 minutes, I will retaliate. Yuan's words that belittled the gathered cultivators ignited a furious outburst, causing them to unleash their fangs upon his neck. Unperturbed, Yuan merely stood his ground with his hands in his pockets as all sorts of weapons struck his body with no results, his presence becoming more menacing as the 10 minutes counted down. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.